All right. Hey, welcome everyone. Got a few people in here already. Hey, let me know if the audio levels are off or anything. Just put something in the chat. Just getting started. But yeah, so this is my new course. If you're new to the channel, I have an old course. It's a couple years old now, called Game Development Basics. We thought we'd kick it up a notch. Call this one Game Development Bootcamp. You know, a little bit more intense. Bootcamp sounds like more serious, you know. But if you're not new and you're aware, I think if you've seen my other course, the goal here, we wanted to make an updated course for Unreal Engine 5.4. So the original course started in Unreal Engine 5.0. It's been a lot of changes over the couple years. I've also learned a lot. I've had a lot of feedback from the community, things that we could do better going forward. So I've tried to implement a lot of that into this new course. We'll start with just a quick overview. All right, good on the audio, thanks. I'm just gonna do a quick overview of what's gonna be in this course. So we're gonna start with the absolute basics. So if you're new to Unreal Engine, you're new to game dev, we're gonna start at 0. If you are not new, the first week's probably gonna be a lot of review for you. Should be some good lessons still. But in this course, it's gonna take 8 weeks. We're going to make 3 projects over the course of this, and each project is gonna build on that learning of the previous courses. So we'll start with a game I'm calling Fire Escape, and I'll do a little demo when we start this lesson. We're gonna do that in weeks 1 and 2. So this week we'll get it started. We'll build some of the core structure of that game. Next week when we come back, we're gonna complete that game loop, and we'll have, by the end of next week, a working prototype that could be built upon to make a complete game at some point if you like that project. But even if it's not particularly interesting to you, at the very least, that project will kind of set the groundwork for the next project, which is called Alien Defense. This is gonna be like a top-down wave-based shooter. We're gonna build upon that a little bit more. We're gonna learn about object-oriented programming. We're gonna learn about structures and data tables. We're gonna make a complete working inventory system during week 4. So by the end of week 4, you'll have 2 working prototypes that you can build upon. In week 5, we're gonna learn a little bit about source control and how to get your project set up on source control, and you can use this to collaborate with other people on a project, or to create checkpoints in time of saving your progress, and that way if there's something wrong with your project, you can always revert back to a previous version. In week 6, we're gonna start transitioning some things over to C++. So we're gonna learn some of the basics of C++ in week 6, and how to translate that knowledge that you've gained from blueprints up until that point and make that transition into C++. And I think for a lot of people, having that transition is really helpful. Like, a lot of courses teach blueprints or C++. So I think taking the knowledge from blueprints and translating it to C++ would make it a little bit easier. C++ is kind of a hard programming language to learn. So we'll do that in week 6. Then in week 7, we're gonna learn how to use blueprints and C++ together. So a lot of times I see on Reddit or other forums, like, which one should I be using, blueprints or C++? And the answer is actually both. You should be using both. That's the beauty of Unreal Engine. It uses them to work together. So that's gonna be week 7. We're gonna build some systems in this action RPG that we're making. And then in week 8, we're gonna talk about launching your game, how to finalize it, get it ready to go to market. And in this week, we're actually gonna come back and put a little bit more work into each of the 3 projects. We'll put some finishing touches. So in week 2, we leave Fire Escape, but we're gonna learn a lot more in weeks 3 through 7, so we can apply some of that knowledge going back to Fire Escape and make it a game that's ready to be released, either for your portfolio, or even if you wanted to try to sell it, you put some extra time into it, you could have a complete working game. We'll do the same with Alien Defense, and then we'll do some final wrap-ups on Action RPG. So that's the basics of the course. This is gonna take 8 weeks. There are 2 weeks, so this is not 8 weeks from today. Today will be week 1. There are 2 weeks that I won't be able to do it, so it's actually like the final week is 10 weeks from now. But regardless, you should, the complete schedule is available on, I think it's on YouTube. It's also on my Instagram, and it's also on the Discord, where you can interface with other people that are going through the course. So I wanted to also put out some of the things that we're going to do in this course. So we're going to teach some game development basics. We're going to teach you from the ground up. We're starting at 0 today. So if you've never used a game engine, you've never used Unreal Engine, you've never made a game before, don't worry, we're going to start at 0. Again, if you've done some of that before, this may be most of your review this week. We're going to teach some basic programming principles using Unreal Engine blueprints and using C++. We're going to teach how to use blueprints and C++ together to make cohesive systems that can work well in Unreal Engine. We're going to teach some common design patterns that are used in game development. So some of the things that we're going to be doing in here can be expanded to complete systems in a much larger game. These are pretty much agreed upon patterns for how to make games. We're going to demonstrate how to apply your skills making multiple prototype games. So we're gonna have 3 prototypes at the end of this course that you can build into a complete game. It's a good starting point for a portfolio. If you wanted to get into game dev and you put a little bit more time into each of these projects, you'd have 3 solid portfolio examples that each show a little bit of a different aspect of your skills, because they are a little bit different from each other. And it's going to prepare you to get started on a personal project that you have in mind. So even if these 3 games are interesting to you and you have a completely different project that you want to make, we'll at least have built the foundation that you can then use to make your own games. Or if you wanted to collaborate with a team, we're going to teach you a lot of those skills so you could get into a team environment, start collaborating on a game with others. So yeah, so all of these are going to be available in, so the question is, are they going to be available in my playlist? All the recordings are going to be available on my YouTube. So if you miss a week or one of the weeks just doesn't work out for you, you want to catch it later, I'm going to keep the recordings up. So no need to be here live. The point of doing it live though is really just to allow people to interact. If you get stuck, you can ask questions. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat. It's definitely something that I got to do better at. But and I am streaming this on Twitch and YouTube. So if there's a platform you like better, you can go to either one of them. But the live video, the recorded videos will be available on YouTube after the course ends. All right. So what are we not going to do? I just want to set some ground rules for if these are things that you're looking for. Not going to be in this course. I think we can provide some resources though. So we're not going to teach every aspect of Unreal Engine. There's just way too much to teach. Specifically, like when we get into the action RPG, if I'm being honest, it would have been way better just to use GAS, the gameplay ability system for that. But GAS would be kind of like trying to learn to ride a bike with training wheels. Like it does a lot of that stuff for you. So I think it's better to like build those things from the ground up. But honestly, GAS would have been better, and maybe I'll make a GAS course specifically after this course that could be like a lead into that next stage of game development. So we just can't teach everything in 8 weeks, but the point is to give you a foundation. We're going to try to teach a little bit about a lot of things, and that at least gives you a starting point for your game dev journey. We're not going to teach advanced programming principles, so we're not going to do like advanced logarithms, advanced AI, things like that. Everything's going to be pretty basic. But it's, again, the whole point is to give you like a jumping off point that you can use to apply to future projects. At the end though, I will give you some resources that you can use to continue learning. So if you get to the end of the course and you're just looking for that next step, you feel like you need to learn more, I will provide some of those resources to you at the end. And then we're not going to be creating polished games in this. So at the end of the course, you're going to have 3 prototypes. Those games are not going to be ready to release. It's going to take a lot more time on your end to make those portfolio ready even. But the idea is that we're building the prototypes. And honestly, like if I was making a complete game, then everyone taking this course would have the same game at the end. What I really want to do is help you build that foundation for a game that then you can make your own and put your own unique spin on. And you'll notice that when we get into the 3rd project, action RPG, there's going to be a lot more chances for you to make those decisions. So we'll try to like slowly take the training wheels off a little bit and allow you to like make decisions on your own, which may mean even you get to a point where you disagree with the way that I do things, and that there's nothing wrong with that. So that's what we're not going to do in this course. But I wanted to also give just a few tips. So we want to keep a good pace. So I'm going to try to only have a little bit each week for us to build upon. If you're watching the live stream, you can try to follow along with me. If you feel like I'm going a little bit too fast for you, no problem with that. My recommendation is just to try to continue watching, maybe do what you can, and then you can always go back later and fill in the blanks with the recordings. The beauty of having the recordings is you have the option to pause it or maybe rewind it even, and find a pace that works best for you. I'll go a little bit slow, especially in the beginning, but towards the end of the course, I think the idea would be that you're learning and that you can kind of follow along a little bit more in real time with me. If you're going to be watching the recordings, my recommendation is to complete the lessons in order. So even if there's a week that you're like, I don't really think I would learn any of this, if you skip a week or you skip a portion of it, I think you may end up in a situation where you get further on and then things don't work the way they're supposed to. So even if something feels like review, my recommendation is still just try to follow along, or maybe just don't build the course, just watch and see if there's little things you pick up along the way. As we're going to go through, I'm going to be a lot of the lesson content comes directly from the Unreal Engine documentation. I'll try to provide links, or we can even go there as we're going through the lessons. In a lot of cases, if you get stuck, the Unreal Engine documentation may have the answer you need. I think a lot of times it can be a little bit lacking, but it is a good place to get at least like some basic understanding of how things should work according to Epic. If you get stuck, honestly, the Discord is probably the best place to communicate. I'll try to keep an eye on the comments, but in most cases, the Discord is going to allow you to get a little bit more personalized help. And I'll try to also keep that up as I'm going as well and check in on it. As we get into these projects, I recommend that you take some time to put your own spin on them, make them your own. We don't want a million carbon copies of the same project out there. And then the last one is to challenge yourself. So I may at some point even just like hide my screen, give you a challenge, give you a chance to try to attempt to do it on your own, and then we'll check back in and I'll show you how I did it. But we won't be doing that right off the bat. So with that, let's switch this up. I'm gonna queue up the next video and we're gonna get started. So if you are watching this live, I do want to give you a warning. I already have Unreal Engine installed. If you don't have Unreal Engine installed, you probably want to go get that started right now. We're going to be doing that in the next lesson, so I can show you real quick how to do that. And then I'll actually be showing this as part of the stream as well. So you're going to want to go to, you can Google download Unreal Engine or just Unreal Engine. You'll get to this page. You're going to download the Epic launcher. If you've ever played Fortnite or Rocket League, I think a lot of people play through this, or it's the Epic Games launcher. You're going to download the launcher. You're going to install that. So hopefully you know how to do that. We'll go through it a little bit, and then you're going to install Unreal Engine. It looks like this, and you'll see engine versions, and you're just going to want to install. So if you don't already have that, you might want to start working on that and get it queued up, because I've already have it installed on my machine. I'm not going to be doing that live during these lessons, just in the interest of having people not have to watch me just stream an installation of a project. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to turn the music down a little bit just so that we can make sure we can hear. All right. So let's start with this first lesson. I don't know if this is a good view. We'll figure it out. Oh, nope, automatically not a good view. Let's go back to this one. All right. So this first lesson is Game Engine Basics. And in this lesson, we're going to describe the purpose of a game engine. We're going to discuss the advantages of using a game engine. We're going to discuss some of the disadvantages of using a game engine. We're going to review some popular game engines, and that's what we're going to do in this lesson. So again, feel free to ask questions. If you're not in the Discord, you can hop in there as well. And I'll get started on this. So what is the purpose of a game engine? And I use this analogy a lot, and I'll use it here as well. But if I was going to build a house, I'm probably going to start, or let's even think smaller. I want to build a shed in my backyard. I have a yard. I don't actually have a yard, but you have a yard and you want to build a shed to keep some tools or some extra storage, things like that. So, and I know a little bit about shed building. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to go like to a hardware store. So in the US, we have like Lowe's and Home Depot. I'm going to buy all the materials I'll need. Maybe I buy a saw and a drill and some nails and some hammers and things like that. And I'm going to get everything I need to build that shed. Now, it would be crazy in most cases to like have the starting point be like, all right, so I'm going to forge my own hammer. I'm going to make my own saw. And then I'm going to go out to the woods and I'm going to cut down all of my own wood, and make that into some wood that I could use to build this house. Maybe that's your thing. But the point of that would be like people have already like done some of that work for you, and it would take you exponentially longer to build that shed if you were starting from absolute scratch. So the idea of a game engine is it's a software development environment, and it holds all the framework that you need to make games without needing to program all this common functionality. So needing to program your saw and your drill and your hammer and your nails and things like that. So a lot of times they have things already built into there for like player movement, level design, 3D and 2D rendering is in most game engines. There's a lot more stuff that is built into these game engines. And the idea is you're not starting from scratch. You're starting at a point where some of these things have already been built for you. Now, one of the advantages of this is that it starts you with like a proven framework where everything is built to work together. So Unreal Engine is what we're going to be using for this course, but all game engines I've used, all of the systems are going to be built in a way that they are cohesive, they work together, and you don't really need to worry about that. The main advantage of using a game engine is it's just going to save you tons of time. If you were to try to write Unreal Engine from scratch, even if you had a team of very talented and very capable people, it would take you years to get to even a starting point with building a game engine from scratch. So for most independent developers, most developers that have a smaller budget or maybe have a tighter timeline, it just makes a lot more sense to just use a game engine as a starting point for your game. And also, as this course you'll learn, a lot of game engines are very beginner friendly. They have a lot of these tools built in there in a way that's easy for someone that doesn't have a lot of knowledge to just start and have a good jumping off point. So that's some of the reasons why you should use a game engine. Some of the disadvantages of using a game engine. So if you are a software developer that wants to make a very specific game, most game engines, you may not have access to that code base. Unreal Engine you do, Godot you do. Unity, I'm not 100% sure. I know that their official stance is they don't give their source code, but I've heard of some rare occasions where they may give it to like a larger company or something. But anyways, in most cases, you have minimal control over the code base unless you're like a very advanced programmer. You wouldn't even know where to start. So that could be one of the disadvantages, is you're kind of like having to use the tools that they've made for you. Generally, there's some form of payment model. We'll go through a couple of the popular game engines. You'll realize that the payment model is usually pretty reasonable, especially when you're starting off. And then you may have overhead of unused game features. So if I'm making a 2D game, I don't need the 3D game features, but in a lot of cases, they're both going to be in there. So you're going to have stuff that you don't need, and you need to kind of filter out like what you need and what you don't. So that could be one of the disadvantages of using a game engine. There are some common game engines. So Unreal Engine, as I said, we're going to be using for this course. It uses C++, and that's a programming language, and Blueprints, which is a visual scripting language to program games. These are two different things that kind of work together, as we'll discover when we get further on in the course. Unreal Engine is free to use, but there is some payment after your game surpasses revenue. Now, good news for most people, that's not until you make $1 million. And then at that point, it's only 5% of everything after $1 million. This is actually a very small percentage of games. So in most cases, most games are not ever going to reach this threshold. But if they do, hey, you've made the first $1 million, you don't owe Unreal Engine anything on that first $1 million, and then you only have to pay them 5% after your game surpasses that. So that could be a really good advantage of you. And then there's also another caveat I didn't put in here, but if your company makes over $1 million a year as a company, then there's some other fees that may be involved as well. But these could change over time. I recommend, if you do a little bit of research, if you have a game that you expect to make some revenue off of, definitely do some research before you get started and figure out the one that works best for you. Another thing, Blueprints, as we're going to do in the first few weeks of this, it's incredibly beginner friendly. You don't really need to have any programming knowledge. It's a visual scripting language, which means you can make an entire game without ever writing a single line of code. It uses these nodes that you kind of connect to each other, and then the game kind of flows through those nodes and processes it. So if you ever use like Scratch or what's the other one? There's another one. It's kind of like that, or code.org, or any other visual scripting language. You may have some knowledge of what that means. Unreal Engine has some tools that make it outstanding for 3D game development. I think at this point it may be leading the pack in that category. I could be wrong, but if you want to make a high-end 3D game that has ultra realistic graphics, Unreal Engine might be the best resource out there for you at this time. It can also make 2D games, but it's not really optimized for that. I've seen some 2D games made on Unreal Engine. I'm not saying you couldn't do it or you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, like, it really excels at 3D game development. And it does have an open source code base, so if you do need to make like a very specific system and you can't really make it work in the existing engine, you could actually go into the source code of Unreal Engine and make some tweaks and change those things out. So the next one is Unity. So Unity is another game engine that you can use. It uses C# for programming, which is a different programming language. It is also free to use, but you must buy seats. So they have like a seat model instead of a revenue model, where after your product or your game passes 100,000 in annual revenue, you must buy a seat for each person that's using Unity in your company. And then also, if your company revenue is over $1 million, you also need to buy a seat to use Unity. And again, most cases, if you're just learning, this doesn't really apply to you. So you can learn on these game engines. And then after you're going to market and creating products that generate revenue, then you can worry about these payment models. So there's no risk in just getting started and learning in any of these. As I said, Unity is not open source. There may be some exceptions. I'm not really sure what they are, but in most cases, if Unity can't do what you need it to do, unless you write some really advanced plugins or you know a lot about how to kind of bypass things, you're kind of just stuck with it as it is. I haven't really heard of this being a problem for most games, so it's not really something you should worry about until you get much further, or if you're trying to do something like very complicated or very complex. Unity is also really easy to learn. They have a visual scripting language called Bolt. I haven't really had much success with it, but the good news is C# is pretty easy to learn. Even if you don't have any programming knowledge, it's very like human readable, so it almost reads like you're reading English. So it's still really easy to learn. I find in some cases I actually prefer Unity based upon the project that I'm doing, especially for 2D. It's great for 2D development. There's a lot of tools that are built into it that make it, really easy to learn if you're trying to make a 2D game. And one of the main benefits, like hands down, if you're going to make a mobile game, I just recommend you use Unity. It is optimized for mobile development. I think like 80% of mobile games are made using Unity. So if you're wanting to go mobile at any point for your game, Unity is probably the best place for you to get started. And then the last one we'll talk about is Godot. I've just actually started learning Godot, and if I'm being honest with you, I'm pretty impressed with it. It's actually really cool. I hope to continue to learn it, and at some point I'll probably release a Godot course as well. You can use C++, C Sharp, or GD script for programming. GD script is their own programming language. It's similar to Python, so if you know Python, GD script will probably be like super easy for you to comprehend. Matter of fact, I've seen so far nothing that's really different from Python when I'm learning Godot. So if you already know Python, this might be the easiest thing for you to just pick up like overnight. It's completely free. They actually have like no payment model other than like donations, I think. So if you're worried about like your game someday making like $1 billion and you don't want to pay anybody for that, maybe just do Godot and then be like, Ebenezer Scrooge, or what's the other guy's name? But yeah, you don't have to pay them ever. I would say like it is really cool, and I think a lot of times like these developers that are putting things out there for free, like, it's probably cool if you're making money, maybe give them a donation or something. I don't know, but it is completely free if that's something you're concerned with. It's great for 2D. Matter of fact, I've seen so far the 2D pipeline is very similar to Unity's. I don't know if they're equally optimized, but if you're making a 2D game, it's really good for that. It does have a 3D tools built into it, but they're not quite there when it comes to competing with Unreal Engine and Unity. I do think that as Godot gains more popularity, this is really something that they may invest in the future, so it could be like a very temporary problem. That being said, like I say, it can't compete with Unreal Engine and Unity. It can still make some pretty solid 3D games. Like if you're looking for like PS2, PS3 style graphics, maybe even like what would be the comparable? Like it's not going to be able to make like PS5 Ultra 4K, 10K rendering, stuff like that. It's not going to be able to do that, but in most cases, it can probably do what you want anyway. But if you are making like an ultra realistic 3D game, this might not be the best place for you to get started, at least for now. It is also open source, so you can make changes to the code base if you need to. And it's been gaining a lot of traction. There's been a lot of bad press with some of the other game engines lately. And I think a lot of people are transitioning to Godot just because, they would rather support that. So it is gaining traction. So the question that I get this question like a lot. I see it on Reddit. I see it in my Discord. I see it around places. Which one should I use? Which one's the best? In most cases, the game that you have imagined, the game that you want to make can be made in any of these game engines. And there are also other game engines that I didn't discuss. There's probably hundreds of them that you could look into. Each of them has strengths and weaknesses. I think it really depends on the project that you want to make. And so if someone asks me, I want to make a 2D mobile game, which game engine should I pick? I would probably tell them Unity or maybe Godot. If someone wanted to make an ultra realistic 3D game, I would probably steer them towards Unreal Engine. But in most cases, it honestly just comes down to like people typically just learn one and then that's the one that they know. So that's the one they love. I'm a little bit biased towards Unreal Engine because that's where I got started, but I do know some Unity. I do know I'm learning Godot now, and I think like they're all awesome. There's really not one that's better than the other. I just have a personal preference. But even saying that, I do recommend that people try to learn more than one game engine because I think it helps you as a developer to like conceptualize things in a different way. And by learning Unity and by learning Godot, it's actually made me a better Unreal Engine developer as well. So at the end of the day, if you ask me which one should I use, I'm just going to say decide for yourself. Like there is not one that's better. I just have my own personal preference, and I know people that hate Unreal Engine, but that's their opinion. So it really just comes down to opinion. So yeah, that's the end of that first lesson. Let's go to the next lesson. All right. So this one, we're going to get started. Nope. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So in this lesson, we're going to get started. This is week 1, lesson 2, and we'll get started using Unreal Engine. So in this lesson, we're going to install the Epic Games Launcher. I'll walk you through the steps of that. I'm not going to do it because I already have it installed, and I didn't want people just sitting here watching dead air while I install Unreal Engine. It's going to take a few minutes, so if you didn't already get started, might just want to go do that now. But I will be doing like a navigational tour, so that'll also give you some time to finish that install as well. We're going to install Unreal Engine for this course. We're going to be using Unreal Engine 5.4. And then I'll do a brief demonstration of how to navigate Unreal Engine. If you're completely new to Unreal Engine, this will at least give you some tools to get started. Even if you're not new to Unreal Engine, you may learn something anyway. So yeah, follow along. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the Epic Launcher and Unreal Engine 5.4. So let's switch this view to this one. So yeah, like I said, if you don't already have it, you're going to want to go to unrealengine.com/download. You can Google download Unreal Engine. You're going to get to this page eventually. If you already have the Epic Launcher installed, like if you've played Fortnite, you probably already have this. You can go to this Unreal Engine tab and you'll get to this page. But you're going to want to download the launcher. You're going to want to install that Epic Games Launcher. And then you'll be at this point essentially, so you'll see this library, and then this Unreal Engine versions is going to be blank. You can just click this, and it will give you the ability to install any of these versions. And there is a new version, I think maybe every 6 months or so. Like just as a reference, when I got started, it was like 4.2, I want to say, 4.22, which was 5 years ago. So I think it's like every 6 months. There's a new version. And usually the versions don't differ that much. They'll do some different changes. I just want to start with 5.4 and it's 5.4.2, just so we have the most up-to-date version of this. So you're going to want to, I'll show you, like you're just going to click install right here, and then it's going to ask you where you want to put it. And then you just click install. You can change the location of the Unreal Engine version. I put mine on like a external hard drive, just so they don't take up space, because they're kind of big. It's like 30 or 40 gigs, I want to say. So I usually put them somewhere else that they're not taking up useful space. But yeah, then once you get that installed, you're gonna have Unreal Engine. This will also be blank, and your vault will probably be blank unless you've already used this before. So go ahead and get that started. I'm gonna go ahead and launch it, and then I'll give a quick tour of some of this stuff. Yeah, if you want to install a lot of stuff. Yeah, I have like 2 external hard drives. One that I keep for stuff I'm working on, and then once I'm not working on it anymore, then I put it on the external hard drive as like a backup. And the external one's like something I usually don't have connected to my PC. All right, so this is gonna launch Unreal Engine. It's been doing a weird thing lately where when I launch it, it opens up one of the, like the last project I was working on. It looks like it's not doing that. Maybe they fixed it. There's a weird bug with 5.4. While that's opening, I can also show you real quick. I always like to plug this just because it's here. We'll talk about this also like in a future lesson. But there's this Unreal Marketplace. You can get some assets for your games here. Some of them are paid. I've bought quite a few of these in the past, especially if I needed something specific for a game. But free for the month. Every month, Epic releases some free assets, and I always get them, even if it looks like something I will never use. I just always get them. Like this lookout tower. I'm like, I don't know what I use that for, but hey, if I need a lookout tower, I have it now. And this one actually had some pretty cool like environmental assets as well. So you can go and get those. They're free, 100% free forever. You always have them. All right, this is probably open now. All right, and then here, this is a list of all your projects. You can see I have quite a few of them. These are some templates for games that you can use. We're gonna walk through these, I think, in the next lesson. If you're gonna be doing some film or video or live events, you can also use Unreal Engine. Yeah, Unreal Engine does have auto LEDs. That's a huge part of Unreal Engine as well. I don't think we talk about this course, but yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, Unity has a lot of free stuff for sure. Architecture, like this is a cool thing about Unreal Engine. It's actually being used for a lot more than games now. They have all these other things. Like I think I saw a like a car commercial recently, and it was like, okay, that was clearly made in Unreal Engine. Simulation, so if you want to do some VR stuff, AR, all that. So for this course, we're going to be using these games templates. So you can create a blank project, first person, third person. I'll walk through some of these as well. But what are we supposed to be doing in this lesson? I think the next thing is navigation. Yep. All right. Let's talk about navigation. So for this, let's just, I'm going to open up one of the ones that I already have. But to create a new project, here's what you do. You find either a blank project, or you can choose one of these templates. Over here, there's a couple options. We're going to be using Blueprint for this. Target platform, this is going to have mobile or desktop. We'll use desktop. Quality preset, maximum or scalable. I just leave this as maximum unless I'm making like a game, like a mobile game. We're going to include the starter content. We'll leave ray tracing off. If you want to use that for a game, this is like some high-end stuff. And then I'm just going to create this project. I'm going to call this navigation. You don't have to follow along with this unless you want to. This is just going to be some basic how to navigate Unreal Engine. That'll open up, takes a little bit. But right now it's making a new project, which also takes a little bit longer than normal. Like if I were to open up one of these, it's a little bit faster. But I just want to show you like from zero. Most people have already probably tried to follow another tutorial, or at least like dabbled around and then been like, man, I need a tutorial. Let me go on YouTube. But figured we gotta show everything, right? That's the only way to make it fair to the absolute beginners. All right. So this is what it's going to look like when you open it up for the first time. I'll just go over a few things really quick. And if any of these things aren't showing up, so like if this place actors thing isn't there, like if it looks like this instead, you can go up here to window and then find the one that it's called, place actors, and it will pop it open. There's pretty much all of them that you would need in here. But up at the top, we have some typical things. File, which is we're going to do new levels, open levels. Saving is done through here, importing, exporting, that type of stuff. Edit has your standard, undo, redo, copy, paste stuff. There are three things here. Editor preferences, so this is how you can make changes to the Unreal Engine editor. So if there's something you want to change the look of, you can do it through here. We may go into a couple of these at some point. There's also your project settings. So these are going to be settings specific to this project. We'll be in here for a few things as well. This one probably more than editor. And then plugins. If you have any plugins you want to add, I don't think we'll use any plugins for this course, but if you're looking for a plugin, this is where you get to that. It's in that edit window. I already told you this is where you can open new windows. Tools. This is more for like, debugging, resource management, things like that. Build, we'll talk about this, I think, at the end of the course. And then, some standard stuff up here. There's links to the documentation from here. A lot of other good stuff. All right, moving down from there, we have this like project toolbar thing. You can change between modes here. You can add something to the project if you want. Here you can gain access to some different blueprints. If you're using sequencers, which is used for like cinematics, that's done through here. These are your play tools. So if I click on this play, I will be in my game playing it. You can see that in your main viewport there. There are also some other things there. So you can press stop to stop the simulation. You can eject, which means now I can look at the actor that I am. So this is actually this is what I was playing as, is this little ball thing. And I can move around with WASD. I can also use Q and E to move up and down, or down and up. And then if I press escape, I will end, but you can also press the stop key. Here you can also have a drop down, so you can change it. So if I didn't want to play in the viewport here, I can say new editor window, and this will open another window that I could use. I can make full screen. So if you're doing development like on multiple monitors, I can start this one and then I could drag it to a different monitor, and then I could still see the viewport, but in my other monitor I can be playing the game. Platforms, we're gonna talk about this towards the end of the course when we start making builds of our games. And then there are some more settings over here. So that's that. As I said, the viewport here is in the middle. This is where we can see what we have in our game. So if I go to this place actors and I grab one of these spheres, I could put one into the world, and then I can see it in my world. To navigate in the world, you can hold down the right mouse button, and then your mouse has a view. So this is like if you've ever played a first-person shooter, it's going to be very similar to the controls. While holding right mouse button, I can look around, get a different view, and I can use WASD, Q, and E to kind of like move around in the world, get a different view of this ball I just put in there. You can also change the perspective, so I can look at like a top view. I can look at just a top like orthographic view. I can, get differing views of my project. And then I can just go to perspective again. I can also change the way it looks. So I change it to lit. You could do unlit, which removes lighting and just kind of shows like the basic colors of things. You could do wireframe. You could do detail lighting. I don't know what that is. But yeah, you can change the view basically. Up here at the top of the viewport, we also have some controls. So this is the selecting, so I can use this to select different objects in my world. I can select this one, and now I get this widget that allows me to move this around in the world. I can also move multiple axes at the same time. This one will allow me to rotate it. So if I put a cylinder instead, because you can't tell the rotation on a sphere, I can go to rotate, and I can rotate this in my world, get a different angle on it. This one is scaling, so I can scale it up or down. I can scale it just on one axis. And that's how that works. These ones are your snapping. So we can choose how much we snap between. So for instance, if I want to move this, it's going to be snapping to like a grid. I can change the size of that grid, so I can put it at like 500, and then it will only move in increments of 500. This is the same with angles, so you can change the angle at which we rotate. If I go here, it's going to be moving in 5-degree increments, or 10 degrees. If I wanted to go 60, then it's just going to move in 60-degree increments from then. And the same with scaling. So that's kind of that viewport window. Again, if you're not new to Unreal Engine, this is probably most of the review. That's that. All right, over here on the right side, we have our outliner. this is going to give us a list of everything that's in our world, and then we can select on one of these and it will select that in the world. So for instance, this is our player start. I can see that when I select it, it selects that. One cool thing is if I'm way far away and I need to find out where something is, I can just find it in the outliner. I can select it, and then when I press the F key as a hotkey, it will snap to that in the world. So this can be really helpful if you're like kind of lost, you can't remember where something is, you can find it in the outliner, press F, and it will snap to it. So that's a helpful little trick if you didn't know it. Down here is my details panel. So whatever actor I have selected, it's going to give me some details of that actor. So here I can see I have this player start. I can see the location of it, the rotation of it, and the scale of it. I can also see some more information. So if I select this sphere, it'll give me some information on what it is. So it's a sphere instance. I have my static mesh, which is a sphere. I have my materials. So you can see some various things on that. And then the last thing we'll go over is the world settings, which gives me some information about the world that I'm currently in. So that's just really the basics of this. Actually, there's one more thing I'll show, and that's the content drawer. So down here in the corner, I guess you can't really see it, but there's a hotkey of control space. We'll pop this up. This is like your file explorer in Windows. You can see a list of everything that's in your project, and then you can navigate inside of that. So here I can go to shapes and I can find this weird pipe thing. I could put one of those in the world and you know, access it that way. Oh man. And then I could make it bigger. And there we go. Now we have some cool shapes in our world. So again, control click opens this up. There's also a little drop down. I don't think you can see it, maybe. Yeah, it's right here, content drawer. There's an output log. We'll talk about this later. There's also some command tools if you want to send some commands. There's a lot more. There's a lot more going on. We'll try to touch on things as we get to it in the course. But for right now, at least you have some idea on how to navigate within Unreal Engine. So let's see what's next. I think that's the end of the second lesson. Yep. All right. Let's do lesson 3. All right, we're just blazing through this. We got 3 lessons in 50 minutes, or 2 lessons in 50 minutes. This is gonna go. All right. So if you're just getting started and you kind of don't really know where to go in Unreal Engine, there are some example projects that Unreal Engine has available for you. So we can, we're gonna go through some of these. So in this lesson, what we'll do, we're going to go through some of these sample projects. We're gonna look at the third person project, the top down project, the vehicle project, and then for the first person project, this is where you'll wanna follow along. So hopefully by now, Unreal Engine has completed installing. Yeah, we'll be showing C++ code, talking to blueprints. So we are gonna cover C++ later on in the course. For now, we're gonna be sticking to blueprints. The idea is this is like supposed to be starting from the ground up. I don't wanna be jumping right into C++. I think it can be a little bit overwhelming. I've been doing this for years, and even for me, C++, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, that's too much. But yeah, we will talk about C++ later on in the course. But for the first few weeks, it's just 100% blueprints. So if you wanted to follow along at this point, you know, if you have Unreal Engine installed, you can follow along for this first person. We're going to be using it as the template for our first game. So if you're going to be following on for the rest of the week, this would be the point where you want to start following on. But for these first 3, you could just watch. So let's create a new first person project. And just full disclosure, I already have one set up. Or did that say third person? Yeah, we don't want first person. We want third person. All right, let's close that. Don't save. Let's go back here. So again, we can launch Unreal Engine this way. Let's go to this view. Yeah, Unreal Engine is definitely overwhelming. I'm hoping that throughout this course we can break it down in a way that's not overwhelming. Hey, Asmino SM, welcome to the stream. We're doing some game dev bootcamp here. This is week 1 of an 8-week course, and we just got started about an hour ago. So if you're new to Unreal Engine, you might want to go back and watch that video at some point. But if you're not, really what we did, we just talked about navigating Unreal Engine so far. So for most people, that'd be review. But here we have, again, as we showed you in the previous lesson, we have these templates: third person, top down, vehicle. So to make a new project, as I said, we would just go to Blueprint, Desktop, Maximum Quality, Starter Content, and then down here we can say where do we want this project to go, and then we need to make a name for our project. I already have one set up for this third person, so we'll just use that one, and then we aren't starting from scratch. I might want to start queuing up the next one too. It's top down, I think. I'll have both open. That way there's no dead time. But yeah, you don't necessarily need to be following along for this either. I'm just doing some basics. I will tell you when we need to start following along. I was trying to like minimize the dead time because like streaming and just having me watch this screen like 20 times would probably be annoying. All right. So that's not the one I wanted. Third person template. So when you first create a third person template, in the last little section, is a nav mesh system built in, or do you have to install a third party in Unreal Engine? There is a nav mesh system. Yeah, it's over here. We talk about that later on in the course. Where is it? Volumes. Yeah, nav mesh. So anyway, when you first open up your third person map versus a blank project, it's going to look a little bit different. So it has this map set up for you already, this third person template. If we press play, we can see that we have access to the third person character. Our mouse does the view. We can use WASD to walk around. Sprint will jump. So this is all built up for you already. So if you wanted to make a third person game, this already has a lot of that core components built for you, even to the point where like if I'm like half on this ramp here, this person will like put one foot up, like they're the captain of a ship or something. So yeah, you can use this as a template. We actually will use this as a template for the project we start in week 5, which is our action RPG game. So if that's the type of game you want to make, this already has a lot of that core functionality. One thing is whenever you start one of these templates, they're also going to have some extra stuff. So we selected the starter content, so that's always going to be there if you do that. There's also this characters, which is going to have our Unreal Engine mannequins in it. So you have Manny here, who's the old school one, and then what's the new one called? Yeah, this is the new one, Manny and Quinn. Cool. Web dev curious to see how it looks to dev in Unreal Engine. Yeah, this course will hopefully teach at least some of the basics. And if you already have some experience in web dev, I find a lot of times learning a game engine isn't crazy hard. You can pick it up fairly quickly. It's just a different way of thinking of things. I came from robotics before this, and so it was like, it's a little bit easier translation because in robotics you're using software to move something physical in space. For game dev, you're using software to move something imaginary in space. But surprisingly, a lot of the principles apply to both, which is kind of funny. So yeah, these are all these different things. We're going to talk through what all this stuff does. Yeah, there's also a third person folder which has some blueprints. We'll talk about blueprints as well. So just a little bit of like kind of what's involved in these. We'll talk about the top-down template. So this one again starts you off with this top-down template map. And if we press play, we can see that we have a top-down view of our character. And when we click in the map, our character moves to that point in space. We don't have any interactions, so no controls do anything. We really just have this one interaction. So if this is the type of game that you want to make, I just boss that box around. Come here, box. If this is the type of game you want to make, this is a template. It has a lot of that core framework built in for you. Even though we are going to make a top-down game in this course in weeks 3 and 4, we're not going to use this template. I'll actually show that we're going to use a different template for that. But if this is the type of game you want to make, I think of like the old Diablo games. I've never played the new ones, but this is that's what I think of with this. Is like one of those top-down RPGs. Again, it's going to give us our characters, some top-down blueprints that we can use for making this game. So it's got some of that stuff built in for you. So I'll close that out. And the last one is the vehicle template. We'll wait for this to open. This one's actually pretty neat. I've always wanted to, I loved racing games when I was younger. And I've always thought it'd be cool to make like a Mario Kart type game, you know. But this would be a good template for that, I'm guessing. All right. So again, like with the other two, it starts us off with a map, although this one's much larger. If we press play, we can we start with this car. Let me remember how to do this. I think yeah, so I can look around with my mouse. If I press W, maybe it's space. W, I can go. Space is my brakes. S goes in reverse. And then A and D turn. So you can also set this up to work with like a controller or I'm sure you could figure out how to make this work with like a steering wheel if that's something you have. But yeah, it's got this cool track going for you. It's pretty neat. What do these things do if I hit them? Oh God, I'm the worst driver ever. Couldn't even hit a ding. To be fair, it was like laggy. All right, so I can knock those around. That's pretty fun. They're like little cones. So yeah, if you want to make a racing game, all this is like built for you already. You could just use this as a starting point. So that's pretty cool. Again, with these, has all this content here, the track, the vehicles, and then this is the blueprints that we need to make this game. So we'll break down what all these are, but just kind of trying to show you like the basics. And then for our game, so this is where we will, let's go here, do this professionally. So this is where we're going to follow along. So we're going to be creating for the rest of this week and next week, we're going to be creating a game called Fire Escape. And we're going to use a first-person project as the template for this game. So let's go ahead and go back here. We're going to launch Unreal Engine one more time. And if you had to install it, then hopefully it's installed by now. If not, you can always go back and watch this later, I guess. What else do we have for this week? Oh yeah, cool. All right. So here we have our Unreal Engine open. We're going to select first person template. We're going to select blueprint, desktop, maximum, starter content on. This is important because we're going to use this. I'm going to call this game Fire Escape. You don't have to call it that, but that's what I'm calling it. And just make sure you put it in a location where you're going to remember where it is. The good thing is the Epic launcher will remember where it is and it will show it to you here after you make it. And we'll select create project and it's going to start creating this project for us. This one takes a little bit longer. I'm going to close some of this stuff we don't need anymore. All right. here's our project. Yep, this thing will close. So this is our first person template. I want to warn you, I'm going to disconnect it in like 2 seconds, but I want to do a demo of how the game works really quick. So this is what it's going to look like. It starts us off with this map that says first person template. We'll go ahead and start playing the game. This gun is super loud. Like one of the first things we're going to do is disconnect the sound, but I just want to show you like from scratch, this is what it looks like. And we can walk around, we can look around, we can jump, and we can pick up this gun, and then it will equip it. And when we press the left mouse button, it will shoot some bullets from this gun. So if you want to make a first-person game, this is the template. It just starts. You just saw it. Like I just opened this. This is what you get right out of the box. You can shoot these boxes. It's actually kind of fun. I like to try to shoot them and restack them. Like get them to stack up on each other again. That's my goal. It's harder than you think. All right. So this is what we're going to be working on for the rest of the game. We can see again here. This is that first person blueprints. So here's all the blueprints for this project. Just because I don't want to listen to that gunfire a million times, we're going to go through what all these do throughout the rest of this week and next week. But I'm going to go into this weapon. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to do it. Down here where it says shoot, this thing right here is called a node. We'll cover this in the next lesson. I'm just going to disconnect this, and that way it doesn't make that annoying sound every time I fire the gun. Let's check. Yep, no more sound. All right, we're ready to start building our game. So I'm going to leave this open. We're going to go back to my lessons, and we're going to go to lesson 4. So you can, if you weren't quite catching up, if you want to still make that first person template, you can listen along as we're going through this, but we're going to start talking about blueprints. I did show a little bit of this already, but let's start from scratch. Like let's assume that everyone here doesn't know what blueprints is. So here's our lesson objectives. We're going to describe the purpose of blueprints as in a visual scripting language. We're going to describe the purpose of a blueprint, which is an asset. So there are two different things. Even though they have like the same name, they mean actually two different things. We're going to define what a class is. So if you're new to programming, we're going to define what that means. So if people say class, you'll know what that means. And then Unreal Engine has some classes built into it. So we're going to talk about a few of those, specifically the actor class, the pawn class, and the character class. So I took this definition straight from the Unreal Engine documentation, and I'm just going to read through it. A blueprint is the visual scripting system. It is a complete gameplay scripting system that uses a node-based interface to create gameplay elements from within Unreal Engine Editor or Unreal Editor. As with many common scripting languages, it is used to define object-oriented classes or objects in the engine. As you use Unreal Engine 4 or Unreal Engine 5, Epic, you gotta update your documentation. It's been like 2 years now. You'll find that objects defined using blueprint are colloquially referred to as blueprints. So blueprint is the visual scripting system, and we refer to the pieces of the system that we make as blueprints. So visual scripting, what is that? It's programming elements graphically instead of textually. So we're going to use like a visual system to define blocks of codes. And those pre-built blocks of codes are called nodes. So a node is a block of code that we can use in a blueprint graph to create a gameplay functionality. And a graph is a group of nodes from within a blueprint. So we have a very basic example of that here. So this is like a blueprint graph that has 2 nodes. The node on the left says event begin play. So this is a node that every actor contains. And when the game starts up or when that actor is spawned into the world, then this event will fire. So a lot of times on begin play, you're going to be doing like programming that sets up that character or that actor for play. On the right is the print string node, which just prints something to the screen or to the console that the player can see. A lot of times we're going to use these in our course for debugging or making sure something is working correctly before we program additional elements. So essentially what we have here is a very basic implementation of programming where we would, when this game starts or this actor is spawned into the world, right off the bat, it's just going to print something that says, hello, Unreal developer. So this is a basic implementation of blueprints. This is a much more complex implementation of blueprints. This is definitely something you would not want. I think I got this from Reddit. So this is a nightmare. We do not want to be in this situation. I would argue even the person that built this has no idea what's going on here. We want to be making nice, clean code that's easy to read for you, easy to read for your team. If a lot of times you may come back to a project years from now and you'll just be like, I don't remember what any of this does. And just from looking at this doesn't probably do much anyway. So what is a blueprint? Blueprints is the programming language, the visual scripting language. A blueprint defines a class within Unreal Engine. So blueprints are special assets that provide an intuitive node-based interface that can be used to create new types of actors and script level events, giving designers and gameplay programmers the tools to quickly create and iterate gameplay from within the Unreal editor without ever needing to write a line of code. We're going to make 2 games using just blueprints. The third one, we're going to use a mixture of blueprints and C++, but you'll see hopefully during this course that you can make a complete game in Unreal Engine just using blueprint system without ever writing a line of code. Like it, I guarantee you. So if you're new to programming and it's a little bit intimidating to you, this is a great place to start. All right, so what is a class? You may have heard this before. A class is one of the core principles of object-oriented programming. It's something we're going to dive a little bit deeper into later on in the course. We'll talk more about object-oriented programming and how to use things correctly to make sustainable, scalable code. That's also protecting you from, you can use some of the principles of OOP to actually present against like hacking and people doing malicious things with your program. Now, a class contains methods and variables. And the way that I usually think of these is a method is a verb or an action. And a variable, sometimes referred to as an attribute, is a noun. So if we were to take something like a car, which hopefully everyone here knows what a car is, and we were to try to write a class, like we made that vehicle game. So if we were going to make that a game using a car, some of the methods that we may need would be like turn on ignition or turn off ignition, press the gas, press the brake, turn the steering wheel. These are actions or verbs. And so we would set up methods for these or functions for these. When we talk about variables, these would be like nouns referring to the car. So like how much fuel, the fuel capacity, the top speed of the car, the color of the car even could be a variable. The make and model of a car. So a make and a model would be 2 different variables to be defined with this class. So that kind of hopefully gives you like a real world example of what a class is. In Unreal Engine, there's many classes that are pre-built for you. So one of the beauties of using a game engine, as I said towards the beginning of the stream, is they've already built a lot of this. And one of the things I love about Unreal Engine is they've done like so much work for you that a lot of the things that you think you need, you don't even need to start from scratch. There's already something that probably exists for you in Unreal Engine, and we'll go through a lot of those throughout this course. It's a bundle of state and behavior that changes that state. Sure. Thank you. From another programmer, someone probably knows more about programming than me. And with web dev, it's a little bit different because you, like if you're using React, React it's a little bit complex to me the way it works, but yeah, you can apply some of those principles from web dev to game dev and vice versa. So I started with game dev and then I started learning web dev and I was like, oh, I already kind of understand how this works. So in Unreal Engine, an object is the base class. Every single thing in Unreal Engine is an object. They all start as that. Now, when we talk about an actor, that is a type of object. And when we learn about inheritance, you'll understand what this means a little bit more. But an actor is a type of object that can be placed or spawned into the world. So it can have a physical location within the world. Now, an object cannot physically exist in the world. So in most cases, you're not even going to use an object. There are some fringe cases where I've used an object if I want to create like a very small component of something. But in most cases, it's going to be an actor. Now, a pawn is a type of actor that can be possessed and it can receive inputs from a controller. Now, a controller can be either a player controller, like a keyboard and mouse, or like an actual controller. A controller can be like if you're moving your phone around, it has like a gyroscope in there so it can sense motion. That's a type of controller. Or if you have a VR headset, you got those little paddles. That's a type of controller. A Switch, like a Nintendo Switch. Those are different things. Or even like touch screens. That's a controller. So you can touch the screen and you can pass an input to something. But a controller can also be something that is controlled by the engine, which means like artificial intelligence. So the enemies that you create in your games are also receiving inputs from a controller, which is an artificial intelligence controller. So that would still need to be at the very least a pawn. An actor cannot receive inputs from AI. A pawn is the lowest level that could be. An AI enemy would be an actor or a pawn. Yeah, in most cases, an AI is going to be a pawn or a character. Now, a character is a type of pawn that contains a movement component. It also contains some other things that aren't as relevant, but the biggest difference between a pawn and a character is that the character has the movement component built into it. Yeah, sorry. I think the stream is a little bit behind my actual talking. So yeah, sorry. All right, someone on the beginner tutorial and sauce. So. Oh, all right. You didn't interrupt. All right. So an actor component is a reusable block of code that we can place onto another actor. So some common uses for this would be like, if I want to have like an inventory system, I can create an actor component that is an inventory system, and then I can place that on any actor that I want to have access to inventory. And yeah, so that's what that is. And we will actually be doing that in week 4. We're going to create an inventory system and put it onto our character. And that way we can make changes to the inventory without having to change the character. All right. So this is where, if you're following along, we're going to go back to our project and we're going to create our first new actor. It's going to be called BP Barrel, like a barrel, I guess. And we're going to use this in a future lesson, but for right now, we're just going to make it. We're going to add some functionality down the line. But for now, let's just get it going. So here I am back in Unreal Engine. Let's change this view so you can see a little bit better. And let's go to, I'm actually going to close this. And here we are in our Unreal Engine. I'm going to press Control Space, and that's going to open up my content browser. Now, if you like having this, you can just dock it. So I can select dock, and now it'll just be like part of my screen. This is how it used to be back in the day, but why is it? Yeah, so now it's like part of the layout. This is how it always used to be. In Unreal Engine 5, they released this like open and closable. At the beginning, I was like really apprehensive. I was like, no, too big of a change. You know, I don't like change. But now I've come to embrace it. So I'm going to select Control Space. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to go back to my top level. So also like if I'm deep into like a folder structure, I could select one of these and I can go back. So I'm going to go top level. And I like to actually keep all my blueprints in a folder. So I can right click in this content drawer and I can select new folder. And I'm going to call this blueprints. And I like to keep everything in here just so it's organized. So I'll probably move some things, and I can actually even set the color. I'm gonna make it blue, so it remind me that it's my blueprints folder. All right, so I'm gonna open that up, and then in here, I'm gonna create my first new actor. So I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna select Blueprint Class. And we can see that it's giving us some common classes, and we already talked about some of these, right? So an actor, a pawn, and a character, and if we read these, it's pretty much word for word from what I said. Hint, I took the definitions directly from the Unreal Engine documentation. So again, I'm not like making this stuff up. I'm not just like, this is my opinion, man. Like I'm telling you stuff from the documentation. So hopefully you know that I'm not trying to lead you astray. There's also some other ones. We're actually going to be using these later on in the course. But if we do this drop down, we can actually see a list of every class, like every class that's built into Unreal Engine. It's a lot. Even like some of these have drop downs. So if like we look in object, an actor is a type of object, and then we can scroll down, we can find pawn, which is a type of actor. All right, pawn. And then in here, we're gonna see character, because a character inherits from pawn. So there it is. And then even within character, there's some other ones. But yeah, we can do that. So for this first one, we're just gonna create an actor. So I'm gonna select actor, and then we need to name it. I'm gonna name it BP Barrel. Yeah, and if you're trying to follow along and you have questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, there will be the recordings of this video will be available on the YouTube after. So if you want to go back later and watch it, maybe you're not in a place where you can follow along exactly, or you want to follow along when you have more ability to focus. And then also you can join my Discord and you can ask questions in there as well. And I'll put a link to that out. All right, so let's, now that we have our BP barrel, let's open this up and we can get a look at the blueprint creation. So this is gonna open it in like a new window here. Like you can see it here. I like to keep these all docked just because then I can like switch between them if I need to. So you can drag it off and then it creates like a new window. If you have multiple monitors, you can even put this like on a different monitor. But I like to keep everything docked up together. So this is the like blueprint view. We're looking at our blueprint that we just made now. And in here, we can see a few different things. We can see a list of all the components. So we can add things to this actor. This is our viewport, so we can get a view of what the actor looks like. I'm gonna close construction script. We're not gonna use that for this course. I don't ever use this. That might make people think I'm an idiot, but I just don't find many uses for it. I'm not going to say never. I have used it before, but it's a little bit more advanced. And then here's our event graph. Remember I said the graph is like a list of all of the blueprints. So we can see here we have that event begin play that we talked about. We also have some other ones, overlap and tick. We'll talk about these later on in the course. But what we can do is we can start by adding something to this actor. So right now it's just like a blank slate basically. So I'm going to click this add and I'm going to select static mesh. And this is going to create a static mesh component on my actor now. And if I wanted to, I can rename this. So I can call it whatever I want. I'll call it mesh just to show. So now with this mesh selected, we can see over here, this is our details panel. So we can see all of the different details of the mesh that I have selected. And then right here, we can see there's a static mesh thing. I can actually select this drop down and I could find a different mesh. I could do search. So I'm gonna actually search for a cylinder and I can see that I found one, a cylinder, and I can add that cylinder. I can then, make changes to it, and I'll show all of that by going back to my content drawer. And with this BP barrel, I could just grab it and pull one into the world. And now when I press play, I can see that barrel there. And it looks like it's like halfway in the ground. So one of the cool things that we can do is we can make a change here. So I can do it like by dragging this up 50 on the Z axis. And now when I press compile here, that'll basically add all these changes to this actor. When I go back to my world, now the whole thing is above ground. We can also make other changes. So I can make a change here. And just for demonstration, I can actually make multiples of these. So I'll make 2 of them. And you can also create a copy of something by holding the Alt key and then using one of these. And with the Alt key held, I can make a duplicate of that. So now I have 3 barrels, right? So one of the beauties of classes is that I can make a change to this blueprint and it changes every version of that in my world. So because we added the starter content, we also have access to some materials. So I'm going to choose, I can type metal, and let's find this. This one's interesting. Orange metal. No, that doesn't look very good. Let's do copper. There's a copper one. Yeah. So now we have this copper material. I can press compile, and now all of those barrels that I put into my world have all turned copper. So this is one of the benefits of the blueprint system. Also, like this barrel, maybe I want it to be a little bit taller, so I can make it like 2 meters on the Y and then drag it up like 100. And then compile, and now I have a bunch of tall barrels in my world, right? So this is really one of the benefits of the system, is that you can make a change to a blueprint and all of the versions of that have the change. Let's do a 1 meter, but I do want to make it like a little bit thinner. So I'm going to do like 0.7 on the X and Y. And now I can see, yeah, that's about the size of a barrel. Like if I was looking at like a 55-gallon drum in the world, that's about the size of it. So now we've made our first actor. What else are we supposed to do in this lesson? I think that was it. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's go to the next one. We're almost halfway there already. This is going well. All right, lesson 5. We're moving along. All right, we're going to talk about variables in this lesson. So this is an introduction to variables. So we'll describe the purpose of a variable. We're going to define some common variable types. There's a lot of variable types. We'll talk about a few. And then we'll demonstrate creating a variable within a class in Unreal Engine Blueprints. So what is a variable? Oh, thank you. A variable is a container that is used for holding information. Like when we talked about attributes, those are usually going to be variables. So if I have a barrel, for instance, how much water can it hold? If it's a 55-gallon drum, then it can hold 55 gallons of water. So a variable of this barrel might be like called like capacity or something like that. And then the variable would be set to a number like 55 or gallons, or if we wanted to measure it in liters, we could change it to liters. So it's just a container for holding information about an actor. When you declare a variable in C++ and also in Blueprints, it needs to have at least 2 things. It needs to have a name. So we need to name every variable, and it needs to have a unique name that isn't used somewhere else on that actor. And it needs to have a type. And a type in C++. Now, other programming languages, you don't need to have a type. If you've ever used JavaScript, your variables don't need to have types. You could just call it a var, a variable, and it is whatever you want it to be. It can even change whatever. But in C++ and in Blueprints, our variables need to have a type. And we can also set an initial value. There are some other properties that we can set of a variable that we'll discuss later, specifically like when we're talking about object-oriented programming. But at the very least, we need to have a name and a type for our variables. So there are some common variable types that we're going to be using. A Boolean is a variable type that can be either true or false. So it's either one or the other. These are really good for when we're creating like if statements. So if we want to choose like, hey, have we reached the point where we need to, true or false? do one thing if it's true, another thing if it's false. An integer, so this can be assigned to a whole number. I don't know why there's an asterisk there. Typo maybe? I don't know. Maybe I was going to talk about something else. Anyway, so they have to have whole numbers. You cannot have a decimal with an integer. It's a key distinction of an integer. A float can be assigned to a number with a decimal. I think I was going to talk about int 64s, but anyway, a float can have a decimal. So if your value needs to have a decimal, you probably need a float. If your variable does not need a decimal, you need an integer. Key thing to note here, because integers can only be whole numbers, if you're dividing an integer, you're going to be maybe like if you divide 3 by 2, you get 1.5. You have to choose how you want that to be handled when using integers. So just a key distinction to keep in mind. A string can be assigned a group of alphanumeric characters. So it can also, if we use English, it can have A through Z as well. You can have, all the other things, hash marks, exclamation points, $sign. So basically any character you can have in a string. There are other types of strings that get more specific on what it can and can't contain, but just the top level of a string is it can have alphanumeric characters. So variable belongs to the blueprint, gradient, or class. I will talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So a blueprint can have its own variables. You can also have variables that exist only within like more complex than that. But at the basic level, a blueprint contains its own variables. That's probably the most basic I can get for now. And then a vector, we'll be using vectors a lot in game dev. It can be assigned a set of 3 numbers, X, Y, and Z typically. So when we were in our game, if we look at this location, this has 3 numbers, X, Y, and Z. If we look at our rotation, it has 3 numbers, the X, Y, and Z rotation. If we look at the scale, this has X, Y, and Z scale. So anytime that there are like 3 numbers, which in game dev, you're using a lot of vectors, we can use a vector variable type. And there are tons more variable types that are in there. You even create your own variable types. That we'll talk about that. But a variable is just a container that holds information that we can use within our actors. So let's create some health variables. We're going to do this on our main character. So let's go back to our game. And if you're following along, the character is kind of in a weird spot in these. I'm actually going to move it. So I'm going to find my first person folder, and then in blueprints, we have this first person character. I actually just want to like put this in my main folder. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to drag it to my blueprints folder and say move here. And now when I go back to that folder, we have our first person character. You don't have to do that. I don't like the way they do things. So let's go back to here, get this better view. All right, so on our first person character, let's open this up. And here we have this character. We can see here, this thing has like a few components in it. Up here, we can see these components. It's got like a camera, that's how we're getting our view. It's got our mesh, which is these arms. It's got another one, which we're not using. It's got this arrow component, which actually tells us like the direction the character is facing. And then it's got this movement component. Remember I said a character is a type of pawn that has a movement component. So this is a character. We can also see that in the top right. So it says parent class character. So if you're ever wondering like what type of actor we're working with, like if we go to BP barrel, you can see it says parent class actor. So this first person character is a type of character. You could also change that in class settings. If you go to class settings here, you can see this drop down of character and you can change the base class. We're not going to do that, but you could if you wanted to. And then class defaults, it has some information there. So we're going to start by creating some new variables for our character. We're going to create a health variable for this. And so in our my blueprint here, we could see there's a section over here called variable, my variables. We can select plus here and we'll create a new variable and we can call this whatever we want. Remember, it has to have a name. So typically with health systems, we want to have a current health that'll tell our player how much health they currently have. And then we can select the type for this variable, and we want to select an integer because for a health, we want it to have a value that we can add to it. And then when we press compile, we now can see that this has a default value of 0. So whenever we start our game, we're going to start with 0 health. Now we can create another variable that will keep track of our maximum health for this character. So maximum health. And this also can be an integer. And when we compile that, we can see it also has a default value. Let's set the default of this to 100. And yeah, now we have two variables. So we can go to our event graph. And if you remember, we have some things. This is the first person character, so it has a few things built into it already. Actually, probably a good time to go over how this is working a little bit. We'll break it down a little bit more. But here we can see that we have this event. This is called an event when they're red. We'll talk about this in the next one. This is called IA look. So this is our look event. And this is controlling how the player can look around in the world. So we're taking the X and Y value from here and we're passing them in respectively to this. And this is what changes the view of the character. And then we have our movement input. So this event is called IA move. And this is changing the location of the player in the world. And we'll break these down a little bit more. I just want to talk about variables. In the next lesson, we'll talk about events and functions. So let's, here in our graph, we can select this plus, nope, that's not what I want. Here in our graph, let's right click. I'm going to type begin play, right? And remember, this is that event that's going to fire whenever the game starts or whenever this actor is spawned into the world. So we can test this by just typing print, and we get this print string node here, and it currently says hello. We can make this say whatever we want. So let's say I am a first person character. And now when I press play, it's actually going to print to the string, and we see it up here. I am a first person character. It's just there for a brief moment, so I'll do it again. I am a first person character. We can also see it in the output log. So if we click this, we get this output log, and here it is. It's I am a first person character. It printed after we started the game, and it probably has another one up here for the other time we did it. I am a first person character. So we played the game twice, so it did it twice, right? We can also pass a variable into this. So see, this is a string. We can take our current health and get it. So if we drag it in and say get or set, we can get this current health and we can pass it into here. And now this, when we begin play, it's going to take whatever the value of this is. This is going to translate it into a string. So it's going to take that integer value and make it into a string, and then we'll print that. So our current health, the default value is 0. So when we press play, it's going to print 0 now. And we can see there, it printed 0. We can also set, so remember when we drag this in, it said get or set. We can set the value to something. And the way we do this, we can connect this up like this. And now we can set our current health to something on begin play, and we can set it to our maximum health, which is 100. And now if we drag this of this set node, this is the output. So this is going to give us a reference to whatever we set that value to. So we can leave it like this, and we'll see it's going to get whatever our current health is. So we're going to get begin play. we're going to set our current health to our maximum health. And then we are going to print whatever the value of current health is. So now we should get 100. And there it is, it printed 100. Not sure if you can actually see that, but it did. So now we can see also, like, we can connect it like this and it will get the same thing. Still prints 100, because this output here of this set node returns what's called a reference. It's going to return us a value of whatever the new value of that variable is. So we can change our max health. Let's make it like I don't know, what is that? A billion? Oh. 1, 2, 3. 1 million. We got 1 million health now. And when we press play, it prints 1 million. So that is the basics of how variables work. We can also create some other variables if we wanted. So we can create a Boolean. Let's call it is player alive. It's pretty common with Booleans that you want to like name it like a question, like you're asking it a question. So like, is player alive? Yes or no. And this would be a Boolean, so we want it to be a true or false. You don't have to do that, by the way, but typically I've seen, people like to name their Booleans like a question, like is player alive or is dead or something like that. You could call it just dead, but then like, I guess that's pretty easy to understand. But anyway, so we can also set that default value to true. So is player alive is true, and we can print that instead. So we can take this, get an access to that variable, and then pass that into here. And now when we press play, it's going to print true. There we go. It's got true. We could even do something like this, where we want to get our current health. We want to see if it's greater than 0. So we can type greater than, and then we can create a branch. So the way I did that was drag off here, type B for branch, and we'll see that branch comes up. And then plug that into the branch, right? So current health, if current health is greater than 0, we're going to follow this true pin, which would print is player alive? Yes. And then from the false, we could do another print. Or let's do it like this. Let's set this based upon whether the player is alive or not. Set is player alive false, it's going to be dead. So we're going to set it that way. And then if we, with this selected, if we press Control D, we can make a duplicate. And then we can set that pin to true. And then plug both of those into this print string. So now what this is doing is we're going to take our maximum health and set it to current health. And then we're going to check if our current health is greater than 0, we're going to set is player alive to true. If our current health is less than 0, we're going to set is player alive to false. And then we're just going to print the value of is player alive. So it's going to print true or false based upon whether the player is alive or not. So let's run this. And because we know that our maximum health is 100, we expect, or 1 million, let's put it back to 100. We know that our maximum health is 100 and we've set it to our current health. We expect this to print true, and it does, it prints true. But now let's take, we can do this a couple ways. We can set this to -10, right? And now because we're setting it to -10 on begin play, and then we check is it above 0, and it is not, we now will get false. There we go. So that's like some very basic stuff. If we're talking about like the health of a player, we can program some of that functionality in there. All right. Let's get some water. So we talked about that. We talked about these variables. I think the next lesson, let me check here. Yes. All right. So, one of the problems with this now is if we were to continue to like create a node for every little thing we want to do, it's going to get messy, right? It's going to start to get real messy. So one of the beauties of Unreal Engine is that we can create something called a function. And that's actually the next lesson, functions and custom events. All right, this is about the point my get a little dry throat. So, all right, so this is lesson 6 of week 1. In this lesson, we're going to explain the purpose of a function. We're going to explain the purpose of an event. We're going to demonstrate how to create a function, and we're going to demonstrate how to create a custom event. So what's a function? A function, when we talk about blueprints, is a node. So every one of these nodes that we have here is essentially a function. All of these are functions. If we go back to our main blueprint down here, we can see like these are functions. All the blue ones, they're functions, right? This green one is a function. And what a function is it's a node within a blueprint that can be executed from another graph within that blueprint. Now, some of the things of a function, it has maximum 1 execution pin input and 1 execution pin output. We'll see different type of functions don't need to have an input pin. Pretty sure they all have output pins though. And we'll talk about that. Functions may have input variables and or output variables. So you can pass a variable in to a function and you can use that information to process it. You can pass information out of a function and use that information further down the road. And you can also have local variables within a function. So one of the questions earlier is like, where do the variables exist? So we can have a function that exists on our blueprint actor, and that variable is accessed by anything within that actor. You can also have a local variable, which is only accessed within that function. So you can't find it outside that function. So only while you're using it. One of the benefits of local variables is that it's like the game engine like uses that variable, and then as soon as the function is done, it throws it away. So it's not taking up space in memory. All variables take up space in memory. So if you have like 1 billion variables on your actor, you're going to need a lot of RAM to run that game. So a lot of times if you have like a variable that's only going to be used for like one specific thing, it's better to create it as a local variable. That way that variable is created within that function. It uses it for whatever it needs to. And then as soon as that function's done, that variable just disappears into the nether. So a lot of times you're going to run into this problem of like when to use a function or when to use an event. So let's talk about an event as well. And to answer the question, the stream is going to go until 2. I will be taking a break at noon. These are all Eastern time, so it's like in 15 minutes, probably at the end of this lesson, I'll take a little break. But I'm going to be going till 2 p.m. today, 2 p.m. Eastern time, depending on where you are. Do the math, figure out what that means for you. So we got about 2 hours left, a little bit more than 2 hours, minus the break. Custom event, these reside on your blueprint graph. So we saw like all of these red ones, these are all events. These are a specific type of event called an input action, but we'll talk about that later when we talk about creating inputs. one of the benefits of an event is it's asynchronous, which means that multiple events can happen at the same time. So you can fire an event that then fires like 10 different events, and each of them, oh, thank you. They can all fire, at the same time. So especially like in game dev, this is really important because like if you're playing on mouse and keyboard, you have your keyboard that's doing one thing with your left hand, you have your mouse doing things with the right hand. If you're using a gamepad, each of those buttons can be doing its own thing. You can be doing multiple events. It'd be like really a lame game if you could only press like one button at a time. And then like only that, like if you press two buttons at the same time, it's like which one fired first. That's, I don't know, maybe you can make a game be fun that way. But in game dev, most of the time you want to be able to fire multiple events at the same time. You got a lot going on. So yeah, so they are asynchronous. One of the disadvantages of using an event, so as we saw with our functions, it has an output pin. There are no output pins on an event, so you basically trigger it and then it just happens, and there's no like guarantee of when it's going to finish. If you have a lot of events happening at the same time and you need them to happen in a certain order and you fire them all together, they could, one time one could finish first, the next time another could finish first. So this could cause some bugs. So this is definitely something you want to consider when you're programming, is when to use an event versus a function. An event can be used to manipulate time. So in game dev, we do have the ability to impact time, like things that are happening in our game. So you need an event for that. That can't be done in a function. You can have input variables, so you can pass information into an event, but you cannot return a variable. So an event does not have the ability to like return, and that is because we don't know like what happens at the end. There is no end of the train, right? Whereas a function has a definite start and a definite end. And then in multiplayer, events can be replicated. Replication is a way of basically saying like, can everyone see this? Can just the server see us? So those types of things. So if you're doing multiplayer, you're probably gonna be using a lot of events for that. I think you can replicate functions too, but I haven't done a lot in multiplayer. So let's create a function. And I think a good place to start with this is if we go up to this up here. Let's delete that since we're not using it. Like this, for instance, here. We want to get whatever our maximum health is, and we want to set it to our current health, right? Let's make maximum health 100 again, so this makes sense. So right when this player starts the world, starts the game, starts the level, whatever, we want to take whatever that maximum health is, and we want to set it to that current health. So when the game starts, we start with full health. And this may be something we want to do often. And every time we do it, like we don't want to have to like reprogram it. So what we can actually do is we can create a function to handle this. And there are basically two ways you can do this. Here in functions, we can press this plus key and we can create a new function. And then we can add new nodes to this, and only the nodes in this will happen when we call this function. We can also, I'm going to delete that. Oh, God. No. Where are we? We can also select some nodes, and we can right click on them, and we can say collapse to function. And when we do that, it removes those nodes from our blueprint graph. Let's change this view. And it creates this new blue node that's called new function. We can change the name of this. So if we're resetting our health to maximum, we can call this like reset health. And then that node is now something that we can add to a blueprint graph. So let's say we had another thing where we wanted to, like, if the player dies, I don't know, maybe we want it to refill it to health. So we can take this reset health and we can set it at the end here. And now we would reset the health whenever we add this node. And then we can make changes within that. So we can right click on it, or we can double click on it. And now we can see this is that function. And whenever we call reset health, it's going to take the maximum health and it's going to set it to the current health. So this is the benefit of a function. We can see here that when we select this, we can see our input. So we can add some input nodes, we can add, or some variables, we can add some output variables. So let's say we wanted to know what that health was. So we can do a return, which is the output of this function. So this is going to be whatever happens at the end. And we can add an output. We can change the variable type, and we can just pass in whatever current health is. We can call this health. And now we can see here that this function is now returning, or it's passing a variable at the end of whatever that health is. And if we wanted to create a new print string, we could print that health. So now it's going to print whatever our current health is, and then down here it's going to print whether it's alive. So we should get two different print strings. So it printed 100 and then it printed true. If we then change our maximum health to 0, it's going to print 0 and then false, 0 and then false. So this is the benefit of a function. So next, let's create a new custom event. So these are all events. We can create a new one, and we can call it, we can right click in our blueprint graph and type custom, and you'll see it says add custom event. And then we can name this custom event. So let's call this just test event, right? And then from here, again, we can pass some inputs. So we can pass an input variable, test variable. And we can call this. So down here, so let's do this. Let's say if our health is 0, right? Let's call test event, right? And let's pass in the number 10. We'll see why we can do this. So essentially we are resetting health, which will reset whatever that maximum health is. So right now it's 0. We're going to print that value, and then we're going to check if our current health is less than 0. Less than 0. And then we'll set is player alive, and I want to pass 10 in. And the reason is I want to, I'm going to reset my maximum health to whatever this value is, right? And then I can call reset health. And now what's going to happen is, because our maximum health is currently 0, we're going to, is this, I think this might need to be less than, or is it greater than 0? All right, so current health is greater than 0. So that's right. We're going to get false. So we're going to set is player alive to 0. Then we're going to trigger our test event. And then we're also, because this is just going to fire independently, it's going to print false because the player was dead when we did this, right? Then, because we triggered this event, it's going to go up here. We're going to set that maximum health back to 10 because that's the number we passed in here. And then we'll reset health, which is going to set our current health to 10. Then we can print whatever that health was. We passed in current health. So then it's going to print 10. So the chain of events here, we should print 0. Then we're going to call this event, and we're either going to print 10 and then false, or false and then 10. Let's see how it happens. Oh, could not find. Pin, parameter, test variable. I'm not sure what happened there. All right, give me a second. This is what I was afraid of, that we were gonna have some bugs. Could not find a pin for the parameter test variable of test event. Does that work? No, pin no longer exists. That's weird. I don't know why that happened. This should fix it though. So remember I said it was going to print 0 and then 10 and false, or 0, false, and then 10. So this is all working now. God, that was my nightmare. So essentially the goal was to show how to create a function, and we did that, to show how to create a test event. I'm actually just going to delete all this because this is just kind of a demonstration. And we can go into the next lesson. But I think I will take a brief break. It's right about noon. So I'm going to take 15 to 20 minutes. Just to chill out for a second. And then when we come back, we're going to, so I'll give you a little precursor of what we did, right? So all of this stuff that we were doing on here, maximum health, current health, is player alive. We've been like creating like some type of health functionality, right? But we may want different actors to have health. We may want, enemies to be able to have health too. Or, in this game, Fire Escape, we're going to be creating fires that we have to put out. And we may want those fires to have some way of keeping track of like how long till they get put out. And we could use a health variable for that. So instead of having to reprogram that every time, remember at the beginning of the lesson, of the stream, we talked about actor components. So for this, I'm going to create a health component that is a reusable piece of code that then we can add to any actor that we want to have health. And then that way we've done it once, it works, and then we can reuse it. So that's what we're going to do when we come back. I'm just going to take, again, like a quick break, step away from the computer for a few minutes. I'll put a timer on. That way if you're watching the recording later, you can keep track of when I'm coming back. Or if you want to step away for a few minutes, you want to keep the stream rolling, I can keep the music going. But I'll be back in like 15-ish minutes. Let me set this timer up. But yeah, I'll see you guys back here in a minute. Gotta click that mute button twice, I guess. Hey, I'm happy everyone didn't ditch out. That's good. Still a few people here. Hey, I don't know if you guys are still here, but hey, welcome to this stream. So before I took a little break, we had talked about variables and their purpose. And we set up a few variables here. I set up a current health variable, a maximum health variable, and an is player alive variable. Oh, thanks. One of the things is we don't want to have to keep programming these every time. So I think something that is helpful in most cases is to create like a component that we can use to like track health. So that's actually what we're gonna do for this next portion. So this is lesson 7 for week 1. We're a little bit more than halfway there. All right, so in this lesson, we're gonna create a health component. We're gonna add our health component to our player character, and then we're gonna remove those old variables that we don't need anymore. So if you're following along, or if you're watching this stream, or if you're watching the recording later, let's go. Let's get started. All right, so first thing we wanna do is we want to create this health component that we can reuse. So here I'm in my blueprints folder. I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna select blueprint class. And then I'm gonna select actor component. And if we read this again, it's a reusable component that can be added to any actor. So that sounds perfect. Let's do it. I'm gonna call this BP health component. And if we open this up, we can see an actor component kind of looks like, kind of looks like our other blueprint. The difference is we don't have components, so we can't add a component to a component. But we can add variables, functions, all those things that we had already talked about. It does have an event begin play and an event tick. We haven't talked about tick yet, but we will in a future lesson. We're going to delete that. So we have this event begin play. And essentially what I want to do is recreate what we had done in that other one. So let's create 2 variables. Let's call this one maximum health. This will be an integer. And then we'll create another one called current health. And then I'm going to create a third one that was that is player alive, but instead I'm going to call it is dead. And this will be a Boolean. Actually, I'm not going to do that. Let's not do that. I changed my mind. I'm allowed to do that. It's my stream. All right, and then let's set our maximum health to 100 again, just so we can show that this works. And then on begin play, we're going to set current health to maximum health. And this will, create that functionality right on begin play of any actor that has this health component. I'm going to make this a function again. As reset health. So now we have that functionality. We can go back to our player character now. And in the components, we can add a new health component. And we can see when we type health, it pops up here. And now we have this health component on our first person character. And when we drag this into the blueprint, we can get a reference to the health component on this actor. And if we compile with this health component selected, we can see those variables here. So we have our maximum health and our current health. And if we were to add that variable, that other variable back of is dead, then now we can see that there's a check mark there on this blueprint. So this is one of the benefits of actor components, is that we can add them, we can create some functionality that's going to be common across all of these actors, and then we can just add it to any actor we want. Let's change the stream so you get a little bit better view. All right. So what do we want to do with this? Well, first of all, we added it. So let's also, on this character, let's delete these. So I'm just going to get rid of these because we don't want them anymore. And it says it's in use. Let's figure out where it's in use. Where is it in use? Oh, in this reset health function. So let's delete this reset health function. We don't need that. And now we can delete all these variables that we're no longer using, and we'll just access them directly from the health component. So one of the things we can do with this health component here, on our first person character, is we can get access to those variables. So we can say get current health, and we can print this. And now we should print whatever that current health is. Let's see. I don't know if it's going to be 0 or 100. It's 100. Perfect. That's what we wanted. All right. So now we're getting the value of current health, but the current health that's on this this component of this character. And we can change that by selecting our health component. And we can change that maximum health to something like 1 or 10,000. And now we should get 10,000 because we're changing the variable on the component instead of having a variable on the actor. So let's put it back to 100. And real quick, I'm just going to check something. I actually don't know where we go next after this. All right, so we did that. All right. And yeah, it looks like that's this whole lesson. So that's good. That was a quick one. All right. So we can see like the benefit of these components. We're actually going to use components quite a bit because I do think it's important. Like if you're going to have blocks of code that you reuse, that you set them up in a modular way. So that's that. We can also, later on in the course, we're going to use this component again when we set up our game loop, which we do by the end of this week. But for now, we have this component. We can reset the health on the component itself. We can also create functions on this component, which we'll do in a future lesson. But for now, we've created the health component as a separate actor. We've added that component to our first person character. We can use it to keep track of health variables on this character or any other actor. And we remove the old variables. So we did everything we were supposed to do. All right. Some water. I didn't think a 4-hour stream would be that much, but it's like, you know, when you first start running again or exercising and like that first exercise hurts really bad, you're just like, oh man, what am I doing? That's how I'm feeling right now. Mostly in the throat region, just a little, you know. All right. So we have this level in our game, right? This is like the template one, but I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to make our own levels, right? Like for our game, this is going to be a game where we like have to put out fires. We want to be able to create like a new level that's our own, or even like multiple levels. So this next lesson, we're going to talk about level creation, which is a huge part of game design. Level design is like a whole job in the game development field. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that we can use in Unreal Engine. So we're going to describe the purpose of a level, like what is a level, and when we use that term. Luckily, it's a term that we are already used to In other game engines, it's called like a scene, and that might be confusing. But when we're talking about games, like level just seems like something you should call the level of your game. We're going to describe some of the tools that we can use for creating prototype levels. And in this project for now, it's going to be all like blockouts, prototypes. We'll come, as we learn more, we'll learn about like more tools to build levels. But right now it's just going to be prototyping tools. And then we'll demonstrate creating a level in Unreal Engine. So when you're starting a new level, it's usually a good design practice to block out your gameplay using the prototyping tools. And the reason is like level design takes a long time. Like to get like a really good looking level, it's going to take hours and hours of development and investment. Yeah, it is. So you don't want to get like 10 hours into developing a level and then realize it just doesn't work the way you wanted it to, and you've wasted all that time. So it's a very good design practice to block out your levels. Like just a quick down and dirty run through the level. Does it flow the way you want it to? Is everything working the way you want it to? And then you can go back and make it look pretty later. But you don't want to do the pretty at the beginning, because I promise you, you're going to end up having to redo some stuff, and it's just going to be a waste of your time. So there are some tools that are built into Unreal Engine that help us do that. Primitives, we've already seen some of those. We've been using cylinders and cubes and spheres for some of the other lessons. There's also a thing called geometry brushes, and there's even a newer thing where you can do modeling directly in Unreal Engine. Now we do have like one level in this, but like let's say we wanted to, after the player beats this level, we want to go to another level. We're going to need multiples of that level. So most games do require more than a level, so it's necessary to be able to move between levels during gameplay. Some assets are loaded with a level and cannot be reassigned once the level is loaded. This is an important distinction, I think. So we'll talk a little bit later about the game mode and the player controller class, but those are actors that are built into Unreal Engine. They are loaded with the level, and once that level is loaded, those cannot be changed. They're just always there. There's also some assets that are persistent between levels. So every time you launch a game with Unreal Engine, it creates something called a game instance. And we can create a game instance class that handles like how the game is launched and things that happen while the game is launched, and that would be done through the game instance. And we'll learn more about all these later in the course, but just understanding like some of the basics of how the levels are loaded on Unreal Engine I think is important. So let's talk about how to create a level. So back here in Unreal Engine, and it's been a while since I saved, I think. So I'm gonna go to File and then select Save All, and we'll just save everything we've done so far. And then I'm gonna go to File and say New Level. You can also open a level if you want to, but we can select New Level. And it gives you some choices. Open World is like the one at the beginning of the day when we were just doing like the navigation. It's a big open world level map. There's also an empty open world. There's basic and then empty level. I like to use basic because it already has a lot of the stuff that we're going to need in it. So I'll select this one, and then I'm going to select create. And now here we are. We're in our brand new fresh level. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see that there are a few things in there. We got some lighting set up. So we got some cool looking clouds. It's pretty good. We have this floor so the player can actually like walk around in the level. Then we have this player start. And this player start is wherever the player is going to spawn into the world. So just to show that, we can put this cube in here, and notice there's an arrow. So when I press play, I'm looking at the cube. I can move this around, and now the cube will be to my left. There it is. So yeah, you can move this player start around in your world, and it will impact where the players spawn into the world. If you don't have one of these in there, I think it just spawns it at like 0, 0, 0. Let's try it real quick. Delete that. Yep, that's exactly what happens. So let's put it back. Player start. It's under this basic, or if you just search start, it'll pop up. All right, and now there we are. So now we have our new level. But this level isn't very fun, right? So let's talk about some geometry brushes. All right. So up here in our place actors, if we look, geometry is one of the things. And these are geometry brushes that we can add to the scene. And I'm going to show you the difference between like this box, right? And this cube. So the cube is what's called a primitive. It's like the cube, the sphere, the cylinder. These are just primitive shapes. Geometry brushes are great tools for actually like blocking out your level though. This is usually what I use. There's some other tools that I think people like, but I usually like geometry brushes. So I'm going to show you an example. So let's go to our starter content. And if we go to materials, these are a bunch of like materials that Unreal Engine has given us for free in the starter content. I'm going to use the same one on both. So we'll use this like weird hex thing, and I could just grab it and drag it onto this. It's going to compile the shader. While that's happening, let's do this too. All right. There we go. So now we have these two cubes, right? And the one on the right is a cube and the one on the left is a geometry brush. So if I take this one on the right, let's make some space here, and I select R to do my scaling, and I scale this on the y-axis. Notice that the shape is like stretching with it. So if we're like trying to block out our level, this is gonna look really wonky everywhere, right? But on our geometry brushes, if we scroll down a little bit, where is it? We have this brush settings, and I can actually like make these bigger, and the texture scales with it, right? So this is kind of like one of the reasons I usually like to use these, just because it looks a little bit better. So this is one of the tools that we can use. We can also use primitives. So if we wanted to have like a sphere in there, or there's like different geometry brushes. So like this one's a sphere. We can change the tessellation of this to like 5, and then it looks like a big weird looking ball in the world. We can change the radius to like 150, make it a little bit smaller. And there we have like some stuff in our world. So that's the geometry brushes. There's also this newer thing which is called modeling. So if anyone is experienced in like 3D modeling, there's actually like some basic modeling tools like built right into Unreal Engine now. We can select a box here, put it in the world, and then you can actually like do some modeling of it. Let's do model. Let's grab this top face. We can extrude it. So you can use this for blocking out your level too, if you wanted. Make some cool shapes with this. So essentially the goal though, at the end of the day, is we want to have a level to block out. And in this game, we're going to be making, let's go back here. We're going to be making a game where the player has to like run through the level with that gun and put out a bunch of fires. So let's find that gun. No, it's in first person. This one. Grab that, put that in our level. We're gonna be using this gun to like essentially like spray fires out. That's the whole point of the game. So what I want to do is I want to make a level where there's like a building basically. So I'm going to use my geometry brushes. I'm going to create a box brush. And also let me show this real quick. If I go back to my starter content and my materials and I grab like this brick one with it highlighted, if I drag this in, now this just is going to have those bricks on it, which will look better. Is it compiling? Yeah, preparing shaders. And I can make this like 1,000, 100. Let's do 50 actually. Can you go away? Thank you. Remember I said we could, with this selected, we can hold Alt and we can create a copy of this. So I'll put that one there, create two more. All right, so there we go. I got 4 walls in this building. I could do let's do a roof too. There we go. 4 walls and a roof. Perfect home. One of the cool things is we can also pull a new one in, and down here we can say subtractive, and now it will actually like create holes in the other box brushes. So let's do this. Look at that. Now I made like a little hole in the wall. Can I go in there? Is it big enough? Too small. Need it to be taller. All right, cool. Now I can go in this hole. So yeah, this is one of the cool things about box brushes is you can use them to like do a quick block out of a level. You can also like, here, let's grab another one. I'm gonna put it right here. We can, over here in our modes, we can go to brush editing and we can actually like change features of this box. So like I can drag this and pull it out. I can grab points, so I can grab these 2 points, pull them up. Control to grab more than one, pull this up. Now I made a little ramp. Look at that. And I could walk up there. So yeah, this is a great tool if you just want to do like a quick block out of your world. At the end of this week, if we have some time, I'll spend some more time investing on this, but I don't want to spend too much time. I just want to show you how the tools work. So I'm going to go back to selection mode. There is one more thing that we can do if we like the way this looks. So I can grab all these box brushes. One weird thing is like usually you can like hold shift and like select multiple actors, but you can't do that with box brushes for some reason. So I can grab them all here in my outliner, and then I can go to advanced. Nope. Where is it? Anyway, you can make them a mesh. That's all. I don't care that much. But yeah, there's a lot you could do with them. So yeah, I definitely recommend, like, if you're following along on the recording, this might be a good time to like take some time to invest some more time into designing your level. We'll do it at the end of the week as well, before the next week starts. But now I got this basic level, I could start, building out my puzzle for this game. I think that's it for this lesson. Let's see. Yeah, block out your level. Cool. We're building the pieces right now. By the end of this week, we're gonna at least have like the first part of our game set up. So this is lesson 9, collision and physics. I'll show you a little bit about this in our game. So we notice, like when I grab this gun, that I'm shooting a bullet and like it has an arc, like a real, I guess this is more like a tennis ball. But if I was shooting a tennis ball in the world, like it's not flying in a straight line, right? It has like an arc to it, like real world physics. Also, like when it hits something, it bounces off, bounces down the world, it stops at some point, like it loses its momentum. If I do this, it'll bounce like way up in the air and bounce over there. So all of this is a physics and collision system that's built into Unreal Engine. And so that's the next thing we're going to learn about. This is the final piece, and then we're going to bring it all together and we're going to make our first system in our game for this puzzle. So in this lesson, we'll describe the purpose of collision in game development. We're going to describe some basic physics principles as they relate to game development. We'll demonstrate implementation of collision between two actors. So we're going to talk about the different collision types and how they work together. And then we'll demonstrate implementations of physics. So what is collision? Collision is the basis for how actors interact with each other in Unreal Engine. So if I pick up this glass, it has my hand is colliding with it, right? So like we can like create that type of interaction within Unreal Engine. So collision handling can be customized for each object by changing the collision type. So if we go to, let's go to our BP barrel, and we have this mesh selected, we can scroll down and we see that collision is one of these things, and we can see this drop down that we can open up. And here's all the collision settings for this mesh. So there are 3 basic collision types. There are no collision or ignore, which means we're not going to collide. There's going to be no interaction with this actor. There's overlap, which means we can go inside the actor, but it will still create some interaction between them. So this would be like an invisible point in your level where, like, if the player reached a certain point and you want some action to spawn, you would have like an overlap trigger that would say like, hey, you just got to this point. Or like, let's say you had fire, which we are going to have fire in our game, and you wanted that fire to cause damage to the player. You want the player to be able to interact with the fire, but you want it to send some type of note to the player that like, hey, just so you know, you just stepped in fire and you're burning. And then also blocking. This is like how physical objects would react realistically in the world. So that's collision. And you notice that we can set it for each different type. So remember, we have like pawn, we have all these different actor types. We can set different collisions for different types. Physics. So there are physics in the real world, obviously. And there's also physics in game dev. So Unreal Engine has a physics engine, and it can simulate real world physics of an object. So we can simulate gravity, mass, inertia, these types of things that are actual physical properties of an object. We can recreate those using the physics engine. And I think they're pretty realistic. Like if you wanted to try to set up some real world scenario with mass and gravity and all that, you could probably, you know, if you're a physicist, you could probably figure it out. Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Yeah, this is a new course. I think a lot of people struggled towards the end of the other course, but this one kind of starts from the ground up. So a lot of this will probably be review if you've gone through the other course. So let's do some testing of physics and collision. We're gonna play around a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to set up these two boxes. Oh, no, I want some primitives. I'm going to set up two boxes, right? And this one will make green, and we'll do another one that's red, reddish, right? All right, if we go into our world, we can see those. I guess it's more of an orange, but still. And notice that I can't like physically interact with either of them right now, right? So let's do some playing around. Let's go to, in this actor, I'm gonna go to my static mesh, and this is the red one. So let's go down to collision, and I'm going to, under this collision presets, it's set to default. I'm going to set it to no collision. And this green one, I'm going to do this different. I'm going to set it to block all. Now, what this means is the green one I still cannot interact with, but the orange one I can walk through, so I can like stand physically inside of it because it has no collision. Similarly, on the orange one, I could set it to overlap, which would mean if I wanted some action to trigger when the player interacts with this, I could set it to overlap, and now I'll be able to step inside the box, but it'll also trigger an event called an overlap event. And like, for instance, here on this barrel, notice we have this overlap actor. We could do something like, where's my barrel? We could go to our barrel, set the mesh to overlap all on this mesh specifically, right? And then I can do on event, this event actor begin overlap. I can do a print string here, and this will return this little return node of this event. It's going to pass in what actor interacted with it. So I can drag this into my print string, and now we'll print the name of the actor when I overlap with it. So this should print the name of my character when I walk into this barrel. You can see there it's printed BP first person character. So that's kind of like how the overlap events work. So right now we have no collision, or this one might have overlap as well. We have with collision, and then we have an overlap actor. So let's now drag this up a little bit, and I'm going to set this to have collision on it, right? So here in physics, or sorry, I'm going to set physics. So I can simulate physics, and this has enable gravity. So let's drag it way up, and then when I press play, it's going to fall from the sky and it's going to bounce, right? We can set up some really interesting interactions where we can have it like hit the corner of this building, then it should roll off. Yeah, there we go. Pretty cool, right? So you could do all of this. We can also set like, so we could create another cube. Let's enable physics on this one, but I'm going to turn off gravity. And now when they interact with each other, this one will start to float away like it's in space. And I can run into it and I could bounce it all around like it's floating around in space. I can go back to this one, give it a little bonk. We can also like set the weight of them to be different, or the mass, sorry. So like this one right now has a mass of 100. Let's create a second one and give it a mass of 10. Let's create a third one, give it a mass of 1,000. So 100, 10, and 1,000. And we can see how we interact with these differently now. This one that's really heavy, I can barely push it. This one was light and I could just basically toss it around like it's nothing. And then this one is, I can move it a little bit more, but not as much. Whereas this one, like, it doesn't, it's a little bit harder to push, right? This one got to bonk a little bit. And this guy's just floating around in space. Cool. So this is some of the, like, if you wanted to have some physics-based interactions in your game, you could do all this stuff with physics, right? Is that it for this lesson? Oh, we already did that. Cool, we already did it. We did the challenge, dang it. I'm telling you, next week I'll be in much better shape. This is week 1, I'm working out the kinks, you know? This also shows you the beauty of editing, because I am like this unprepared usually when I'm recording these videos, but then I just edit out all the times I do dumb stuff. So just because people on YouTube look like they know what they're doing, I see these also like on Instagram. I see these videos of people making this like delicious food, and I'm like, I wonder how many times they messed it up to get it to look that delicious. That's why, like, when I watch like cooking videos, I'll watch the ones where it's like live. Oh, thanks. All right, so we've learned quite a bit. We're gonna pull it all together. We got like an hour left. I think we can get this going in an hour. The final lesson, putting out fires. So we're actually gonna make some gameplay now. Wow. Thanks, AutoMod. Yeah, I wish I was a pro. I'm just a beginner that's had a little bit more experience. Isn't that what I guess that makes? I know a little bit more than a beginner. Let's say it that way. So in this week so far, we learned about Unreal Engine. We learned about actors and what they are. We've learned about variables and functions, and we've learned about collision, and we've learned about a lot of stuff, right? So now we're going to take all of that and we're going to put it together, and we're going to make our first like portion of our game loop. So in this, essentially what we want by the end of this lesson is we want the ability to have a fire in the world. The fire can do damage to the player. The player can pick up the gun and shoot water at the fire to put it out. And then we want the barrels that we created to be able to refill the water gun. So we're going to do all of that in this lesson. And that's the whole lesson. So let's get rid of all this stuff that we don't really need. Let's get rid of this cube. First thing I want to do, and we already have this gun in here, is I want to create my BP fire. So let's, in our blueprints folder, I'm going to create a new actor. It's going to be an actor. I'm going to call this BP fire. And if you've been following since the beginning, we included the starter content because we actually need this fire. We'll learn more about particles in a future lesson, but for now, we created BP Fire. I added a particle system. Make sure you choose the one that's Cascade, because that's the one that has the like starter content. Look at that. It's a pretty cool looking fire, right? And that's all that we have on there for now. We're just going to, and then I'll just drag one of these into the world to see that we now have a fire. There it is. Let's make it a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more intimidating, right? So we have that fire. Let's next set up the ability to have it do damage to us. So for that, we need to create something that we can interact with. We can't interact with this particle system, I don't think. Oh, yeah, it does. But I'm going to create... Actually, let's try that. No, that's not going to work, right? All right, I'm going a little off script here. I'm actually just mostly curious. On component, begin overlap. Let's print. This is the actor that's overlapping, so this should print the name of the player. No, it didn't work. All right, experiment failed. All right, let's add a static mesh, and I'm going to call this collision. And in here, in this collider, I actually want to use a cylinder, because that'll be like kind of the general shape of the fire, right? I guess we could do like, yeah, like that's just the general shape of it. It could be a little bit shorter, I guess, 0.7. Yeah. Let's compile that. Let's play this. Yeah, but we want to be able to like overwalk it, right? So I'm going to go to with my collider activated, with my collider selected. I'm going to go down to collisions. I'm going to set this to overlap all. And now I should be able to walk inside there. And we can, with this selected still, go to our event graph, and we can scroll down to the bottom. We have all these events. So with collision, our collision mesh, I'm going to say on component, begin overlap. Let's print this name of my actor. All right, so that works. All right, cool. Now, let's actually program something. So there are two things that are built. There's some functionality already built into Unreal Engine. So we want to be able to do damage. That's why we built this whole health component, right? So we can drag off here and we can say apply damage. This is already built into Unreal Engine. It's like a damage function. And we can say other actor is the damage actor. So this is saying when we overlap with our collision mesh, we want to apply damage to whatever actor interacted with it. And then we can set an amount of damage. So let's set 50. So when we overlap this fire, we're going to take 50 damage. Let's go back to our player character. Now, the other side of this is we have another event called any damage. And this is linked to this. So this one applies the damage. This one takes the damage. And here we are on our first person character. So in here, this damage variable is the damage that we passed in. Now we already set up a health component on this character, so we can do, we can like get our current health and then subtract that. But I actually think like the ability to like take damage is something that we're going to want to be doing often, and we want to do it on anything that has a health component. So let's make a new function for that on this health component. So I'll create a new function. I'm going to call this damage handling, damage processing, something like that. And I want to pass in a variable of how much damage we took. So I'm going to create a new input variable. I'll call this damage. And I'm also going to make this an integer. And so what do we want to do? We take some damage. How do we want to handle that? Well, we want to take whatever our current health is, right? We want to subtract that damage from our current health. And then we want to set, so this is going to return like A minus B. That's the result of that. We want to set that to our current health, right? So now this will take whatever damage we take, it will subtract it from the current health, and then we'll set our health to that new value. And then we have that return node, remember. We can set an output of this. I'm just going to create a Boolean because I like whenever we take damage. To check how much health is left, or to check like, is the health 0? So is health depleted is going to be the return of this node. And to get that, we want to do a branch. Or sorry, we don't need that. So we'll get our current health, and if it's less than or equal to 0, right? Then we want to return true. So essentially, let me walk through this again. We're going to create this damage handling function. It's going to take an input of however much damage we took. We're going to take our current health and subtract that value, and then we're going to set that to our current health. And then we're going to check, is our current health less than or equal to 0? And depending on whether it is, we'll return true or false. Is our health depleted? So now one of the benefits here is we can delete this. So we can just call this function and pass this in. So again, this is just a time for a quick note. It created this truncate node, and what this is doing is it's taking this float. Remember, a float can have a decimal, and it's going to create an integer from that. Now, what truncate does is it's going to take whatever the decimal is, it's just going to cut it off and throw it away. If you want to have like some more advanced math maybe being done, you could do round. And that would round up or down, dependingly, and then you could pass that in. Or you could have these variables be floats, and then you could just pass that float in. I know that we're only going to be dealing in whole numbers, so truncate's fine for me. Then what we'll do is we will create a branch, and I could just pass this as health depleted right in, and then I'll create a placeholder for this for now. But if the health is depleted, I want to print player's health is depleted. I can drop this down, and I can actually select a different color for this. So I'm going to make this red so that we know that the player is a goner. All right, so let's just review really quick what we did. We created this fire actor. We added a particle system to look like fire, and we created this collider. I can also change the visibility of this to not visible, right? So now we can actually see the fire. It's still there. We'll still get that interaction, but it's not visible. Let's make this a little bit bigger. You can also select is hidden in game, and what that'll do is like you can see it, but then when we press play, it'll hide it. It's up to you. I'm just gonna make it not visible because because I know like wherever I put the fire, I'm going to have a collider on there. So it has that collider. When we overlap, when something overlaps with that collider, we're going to get whatever actor that is, and we're just going to apply damage to it. We picked 50. You can also make this a variable by dragging off, saying promote to variable. And now we could set it, you know, on this actor. And it's just a variable now. So it's going to apply damage. The other side of this is taking damage. And so on our character, whenever we take damage, we're going to get that value. We created a function on our BP health component we made a couple lessons ago called damage handling. This is going to take whatever that damage is. It's going to subtract it from our current health. Then we'll set that to our current health. We'll check if it's 0 or below. And we're going to pass that as a Boolean. If that Boolean is true, we're going to print that the player's health is depleted. So because it's doing 50 damage and we have 100 health, we should have to do that twice. So there's once and then there's twice, and now my health is depleted. So the fire can kill me. We will handle death, or I guess the lose condition, in a future lesson. But now the fire is set up. What else? All right. The next thing is we need to set up our gun, right? What was that? Set up the gun. All right. So this gun, it's actually a little bit weird the way they programmed it. It's good. It's a good design. But for a beginner, it might be a little complex. So let's go into this first person folder, this blueprints. I'm going to take two things, actually these three. I'm going to take this first person projectile, this rifle pickup, and then this thing that's called weapon component. I'm going to drag those all to my blueprints folder. There we go. Now this pickup is this one that's in the world. This allows us to pick up the rifle. So over here in our outliner, if we select this, we can open it up and we can see like what's happening in here. And there are some notes. So like they did a good job of like creating a little note of what's happening. But remember we just learned about this on component begin overlap. So that's this collider here. We're going to cast a first person character. A cast is a hard reference. We'll learn about that later. If you want to learn more, you can go read this documentation. It's going to set it as a reference actor. It's going to set whatever actor collided into this variable, first person character reference. And if the cast fails, so this is kind of like an if, where like if this is like the true, so like this happened, but if it doesn't happen, then it's going to pass this. It'll give us an error. It's going to do some other stuff here, but essentially what happens eventually is it's going to find a component on the first person character. It's going to find this mesh, which is the arms. And it's going to basically create it so that the character now is holding a weapon. And then what does this do down here? It's going to add it. Essentially, this is just handling like picking up the weapon, right? But once we pick up the weapon, it's not like this anymore. This is just the weapon pickup. What it is actually this component. So it's actually like adding this component. Remember we have this health component that's a component. This is like a different component, basically. You can see it's a skeletal mesh component. This, remember way back, we disabled this node here. This is the sound. So this is handling like the firing of the weapon. So this is our input. So when we click the trigger, this does this. It triggers this event. But it's going to spawn first person projectile into the world, which is basically just a bullet into the world, and then do some other stuff down here that we don't care so much about. But this is all like a little bit advanced for this portion of the world. But I walked through, just so you know, that essentially when we pull the trigger, really what we're doing is we're just creating a first person projectile. This is that first person projectile. You can see it here. It looks like a little yellow ball. Like, I can show you that if I change the material of this to like steel, compiling. All right, now it's gonna look like a little cannonball, right? See, now I got those. All right. So what we can, this is all just to get to this point. We want that when the player like fires the bullet, that the bullet is what's going to be handling like whether or not it puts out fire, right? So we want the functionality for putting out the fire to be on this projectile, is I guess what I'm saying. So for these projectiles, the first thing I want to do is, this is the event hit on this projectile. So this is what happens when that ball hits something in the world. I want to, is this, no collision. I want to first change, because it's water, right? We want it to be water. I want to change the collision presets to overlap all, right? And then now they can like go through things, right? And then we can, because it's now water, we don't really care about it like bouncing. So I'm going to delete all of this. So we have just like, did it hit something? And to show this is working, now we can do a print string, and we can get the other actor and we'll print that. And now whenever those balls hit something, it's gonna print the name of what it hit. So if we hit the fire, it should, all right, that didn't work. Let's do something different. I don't want any of this actually, now that I think about it. Let's, with our collision selected, let's find on component, begin overlap. Let's do it this way. So now this should definitely work. If it doesn't, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, so BP fire, right? So now what we can do is we can take this other actor and we can see in get component, or actually we don't even need to do that. We can even go a little bit easier than that. We can just say apply damage, right? And we can pass in other actor to damage actor, and we can set it to like 20, right? And now whatever this ball, let's even like change this to a different color. Is there one that looks like water? I have a feeling this doesn't look like water. It says ocean. Oh, that's cool. It actually kind of does. All right. Now that whenever those bullets hit something, it's going to apply damage. What we can do is go to our fire now and add a health component to our fire. And then any damage. what do we call it? Damage handling. All right. So we've already done this before on our player, but this time, when the health is fully depleted on this fire actor, I want to destroy it. So let's see what happens when we do this. We're going to pick this up. We're going to hit it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then the fire is put out. So we did it. We put out a fire. All right. Let's put some more fires. Let's make a lot of fires. Put one over here. Oh, here's another cool little trick. So this fire is in the air, and when I press the end key, END, it will drop it until it hits the first thing in the world. So now it's on the roof. So now let's go put out some of these fires. And then this one. All right, so that's that. And then the last thing is we want to set up our BP barrel. And for this, on this weapon component, let's create like an ammo system, like a system for keeping track of how much ammo there is. So I'm going to create two new variables. They're going to be integers. The first one is going to be maximum water. I don't know, water. This is water, right? Current water. We got our begin play up here. God, there's so much stuff. Let's set current water to maximum water. There's definitely an easier way to do this, just so you know. But I want to be consistent. We're gonna collapse this to a function called refill water, and we do need to set that maximum water to something, otherwise this won't work. So let's call it 100. Now here, whenever we shoot our gun, I want to create another function called deplete water. And this is going to take whatever our current water is, and we are going to minus decrement it. So a decrement does the same as this. So if I do subtract 1 and then set, so this is the same as this. So we subtract 1 and then set it as a new value. Decrement subtracts 1 and then sets it as a new value. There's also increment. It adds 1 and then sets it as a new value. So we're going to decrement this. Then let's just print. Let's print what our value is. And we just need to add this here, deplete water. And it's just gonna count down from 100. 89, 80. All right. So what we can do with the barrels now is this is where I made it. I made it a little too hard, but that's fine. Let's say get component by class. This is going to be a weapon component, which is this one here. Oh, not get. Oh. Get component weapon. So we're on the barrel. Whenever we overlap with it, we're going to get the component, and we want to see if the overlapping actor has a weapon component. This is going to check if the player has the gun equipped, basically. Now we could do some functionality from here where we like, but the first thing I want to do is actually see if the player has a weapon equipped. So we can use an is valid node. This again is like another branch. Matter of fact, if we click on it, it basically is a branch. This is actually a macro. It's a different type of function where we can have multiple outputs. So this is like built into Unreal Engine. So here on my barrel, we're gonna look at whatever actor overlapped with this. We're gonna see if it has a weapon component. And if it does have a weapon component, then do something, right? We already have a thing called refill water. So we can get access to that function on this weapon component, on the weapon component of the actor that overlapped. And then we can destroy actor. Did I do that on my projectile? We want to do this. That way we don't have a million bullets. So destroy actor, just like, it's gone. Sorry. It's finito. Which also means like anything that happens after this, like if we put a print string here, this will never trigger because this is already triggered. It's gotten rid of the actor and now it doesn't exist, which means anything that happens after that will not happen. All right. So let's talk through what we have so far, because I think we're almost there. So this is on our projectile. We did that. All right. So on our barrel, we're going to see if it has an actor component. If it does, meaning is valid. If it does, then we'll refill the water and then destroy this actor. So let's fire some bullets off. Let's get down to like, I don't know if you can see it that well. Down at 80, right? So that'll be 79. If I overlap with this, it's now gone. And then when I fire, I'm back to 100 again. So that barrel works. We now have we have all the pieces that we need. We did it. Ta-da. With 30 minutes to spare. All right. I feel like I missed something. Let me look at this. All right, so we got our BP fire. We did that. We created our water gun. We did that, and then we did BP barrel. Yeah, so we got it all. We did it. And that was the last lesson for the week. What else do we got? Cool. All right. So we actually did a lot. Three hours. We accomplished all of the objectives for this week. But let's kind of go back. And if you're following along, you know, you should be kind of in a similar position to me. Your game might not look exactly the same. If you're watching the recording later, your game might not look exactly the same. But we do have some pieces now, right? So essentially what we can do is we can press play in our game. We have this first person character and we can interact with these fires and it will do damage to us. And if we go to 0, we will die. Not yet, but we will by the end of next week. we can pick up this gun, and this gun will allow us to fire some water, and these waters will put out these fires, and we can just keep firing some. Can we put it out from down here? No. Oh, okay. When we get low on water, we're at 55. We can pick up this barrel. That refills our water back to 100. And then we can get back to putting out fires. So we have like the very basics of a game loop at this point. What we don't have is the ability for the player to lose, right? So again, if we if we get hit, right now there's just a placeholder, right? So we'll program this next week. We also don't have a win condition, which would be like all the fires are put out. The game is like complete. You've completed the level. So we'll program that next week. There's also a few more things we're going to do to like clean things up in our game. As we learn more principles, we'll apply these to things we already had. So like one of the things is I don't want to have to like keep clicking this button every time I want to shoot some water. Like if I had like a water gun, it's just going to shoot like a stream of water, right? So we'll set up something next week to have it set up like a stream of water instead of just like one after another. We also we've been using print strings to keep track of like variables and stuff, but like it's not really like a good what is this? It's not like a good, player experience to have to look at some tiny numbers that are on the string. So next week we're also going to set up like a UI so the player can have access to information like how much water they have left, how much health they have left, how many fires are left in the world. And we'll do all of that next week. And by the end of next week, we're gonna have like a working prototype of this game. So if I think I wanna pull up this schedule. Let me just find this. Should be right here. Look at that. Like a real pro. Yeah, first week done. I'm more prepared for next week. I now know that like doing this live is a whole different beast than like being able to record myself and edit out all the stupid things I say. Having plenty of water is a big part of it. Even with the break where I refilled my water, I'm still definitely feel like I'm running dry. So here's the schedule. I just want to caveat, like life happens, right? All of us have difficult lives that get complex from time to time. So this is subject to change. I will put out on my Discord, on my YouTube, if any of these days change. But for right now, this is kind of like the tentative schedule. Also, hang on one second. There we go. So next week we're gonna do week 2. I got this. I got this. We're gonna finish out our fire escape game. So we'll have a completed game loop. Our first prototype will be complete by the end of next week. On week 3, which will be June 21st, that's another Friday, we're gonna start our second game, which is called Alien Defense. It's like a top-down arcade style shooter with wave bases. We're gonna have hordes of aliens coming after us, wave after wave after wave. We'll do that in weeks 3 and 4. So notice I skipped the last weekend in June. I have some personal stuff to do that weekend. We'll be back on the 5th of July for week 4, where we're gonna finish Alien Defense. And then we'll go through the rest of July. And then we'll finish out week 8, which will be the final week of the course, on August 2nd. We'll have a completed 8-week course. We'll have 3 completed prototypes. You'll know a good amount about Unreal Engine blueprints by that point. So I hope you can attend. Also, if you miss a week, the recordings are going to be available on my YouTube, so you can always watch them later. If you were trying to follow along and you got a little bit lost today or stuck, you want to go back through some things, you can watch the recordings. Also, I do have a Discord where you can communicate. There's some channels set up there where you can communicate with other people that are going through the course. Let me get some links going for that. So here's a link in the YouTube. Oh man, I'm getting there. I promise. Here's a link in the YouTube. And if you're watching on Twitch, here's a link there. So there's the Discord. You can join the Discord, communicate with others. There's a lot of other people in there that are really cool. They can help out people that know just as much as me, people that know more than me. There's a few people that are like super duper smart in there that I even ask questions from time to time. So if you want to communicate, you want to keep track of where the course is going to be, you can join the Discord there. I'll also be putting out notes, like if any of these weeks change, I'll put some information in there. If you have questions, you can ask questions there. So this is going to be these are going to be these dates, 10 to 1400 or 2 p.m. for you Americans every week. And then this is the schedule again of kind of what we're going to be going through. I went through this at the beginning, but this is what's going to be happening each of these weeks. Oh, you're awesome. So today we did Game Engine Basics. If you missed today, if you're just coming in or you came in towards the end, you can go back and watch it from the beginning. We start from absolutely zero. We start with what is a game engine? Like, what is it? That's where we start. Next week, we're going to complete this game. And then, like I said, weeks 3 and 4, we're going to make another game called Alien Defense. Weeks 5 through 7, we're going to make our third prototype, which is going to be Action RPG, which is going to be kind of like I guess like Fable or Witcher or any of those types of games. And then the last week, we're going to talk about how to launch a game. We're going to talk about wrapping things up, putting them into a project format that others can use and play, and different ways you can release your game. So I hope you can make it back for each week. If you can't make the recordings, sub to the channel. And if you can't make the live stream, you can watch the recordings, sub to the channel. But that is